Chapter 46-53. The blazing white light instantly enveloped Zhuowen and Xiao He. The two of them felt dizzy and the scenery in front of them changed rapidly. When the moving scenery came to a complete stop, what appeared in front of them was a huge and majestic city. This huge city was not one, but a combination of huge cities suspended in the air. At first glance, it was simply a huge city of buildings. The huge buildings in the huge city were emitting colorful lights. Zhuowen scanned with his divine thought and was shocked to find that the flowing lights on the surface of these huge city buildings were fifth heaven of the eternal realm formation. It should be known that this huge city of buildings was made up of hundreds and thousands of huge cities, and each of them was surrounded by a formation of this level. It could be said to be quite extravagant. As expected of the Abyss realm, ranked first among the 5 invincible realms. This Abyss city has such a deep heritage. The power of this city alone is probably much more terrifying than any of the super realms. Xiao He sat on the hilt of her sword and looked at the magnificent city of buildings in front of her. Her small black eyes were full of horror. Zhuowen was also deeply shocked by the scenery in front of him and sighed in his heart. This was the difference between an invincible realm and a super realm, and the difference could be described as earth-shattering. I have informed the Lord of the Abyss and the other 2 divine masters. They are already waiting for you in the main hall of the city. In front of the huge and magnificent gate of the Abyss city, Sir Danjun came and turned to speak to Zhuowen in a deep voice. Zhuowen could see that Sir Danjun's expression was extremely serious at the moment, as if he had encountered some important matter. This made Zhuowen very surprised. Could it be that the Lord of the Abyss summoned him because of some important matter? Although his strength was enough to move unhindered in a super realm, there were still many existences who were much stronger than him in the invincible realm. It could be said that he was as insignificant as an ant to the Lord of the Abyss. However, he could tell from the pill formation Divine Lord's expression that the Lord of the Abyss had summoned him for something important. What was even stranger was that the 3 god-tier masters of the Abyss realm were all gathered here. Zhuowen did not think that his status was so great that the 4 existences who stood at the peak of the Abyss realm would receive him at the same time. Why is the Lord of the Abyss looking for me? Zhuowen suppressed his doubts and followed closely behind the Divine Lord of Pill Array as he stepped through the gates of Abyss City. The area of the Abyss City was extremely vast. There were some kind of teleportation channels connecting the giant cities, flashing with dazzling brilliance. Zhuowen could see cultivators with powerful auras coming and going in the cities. None of them were ordinary. Along the way, Lord Danjun and Zhuowen looked at each other in silence. Moreover, Zhuowen could see that Sir God Danjun's face was getting more and more solemn. After passing through countless huge cities, the 2 of them finally arrived at the main city. Zhuowen, put away your divine weapon first. Without permission, you are not allowed to use your divine weapon at will in the main city. Sir God Danjun stood at the entrance and glanced at the Taiyu sacred sword floating above Zhuowen's head as he reminded Zhuowen. Humph. You don't have to put it away. I'll go in myself. Xiao He put her hands on her waist and pouted. She turned into a ray of black light and entered the great world. Let's go. Sir God Danjun nodded and led Zhuowen into the main city. The main city was much larger than the other sub-cities and the flow of people was several times more than the other sub-cities. Sir God. Sir God. In the main city, most of the cultivators knew Sir God Danjun. Wherever he passed, many cultivators bowed to the Divine Lord of Pill Array. At the same time, they looked curiously at Zhuowen, who was behind Sir God Pill Array. They were whispering about Zhuowen's identity. Along the way, the 2 of them finally entered the grand and majestic main hall. 108 enormous violet gold divine pillars stood within the main hall, and they supported the entire main hall. Deep in the main palace, there were 3 stalwart figures. Their backs were facing Zhuowen and Sir God Danjun. However, the aura that the 3 figures exuded made Zhuowen's pupils dilate and his heart beat rapidly. Sir God Danjun quickly walked forward and cupped his hands at the figure in the middle. Abyss Master, I have brought Zhuowen here. The 3 figures turned around slowly. The figure in the middle wore a black gold crown and a navy blue robe. He looked like he was in his 40s. He had a square face, sharp eyebrows, and bright eyes. He gave off a fierce and powerful aura. He was the ruler of the Abyss region, the Abyss Master. On the left of the Abyss Master was an old man with a head full of white hair. He wore a loose black robe and his eyes were as sharp as knives. At a closer look, Zhuowen realized that the loose robe on the old man's body was made of countless black talismans. The black talismans flowed with a faint black glow. They looked inconspicuous, but the aura that they gave off made Zhuowen very wary. On the right of the Abyss Master was an old woman with white hair. She wore a starry robe and held a scepter that was decorated with sparkling crystals. Sir God Danjun, you have done well. The Lord of the Abyss nodded at the Divine Lord of the Pillar Ray, then his sharp eyes fell on Zhuowen. Zhuowen, we finally meet, the Abyss Master said meaningfully with a smile on his face. Zhuowen was confused. He said, greetings, Abyss Master. This is the first time we have met, right? Why do you seem to know me for a long time? The Abyss Master said with a faint smile, you are right. This is indeed the first time we have met, but I have been paying attention to you for a long time. I have learned a lot about your experiences and things. As he spoke, the Abyss Master pointed at the old man next to him and said, you should know Sir God Danjun. Next, I will introduce one of the 3 great God Masters of the Abyss Realm, the Great Talisman Master Pu Chengju. Pu Chengju nodded slightly and looked at Zhuowen with a strange look. He frowned slightly but did not say anything. This is the Great Talisman Master of the Abyss Realm and the most powerful Talisman Master of the 100 Outer Territories. Her name is Bai Shuyuan. The Abyss Master pointed at the old woman on the other side and introduced. The old woman gave Zhuowen a kind smile. She looked at Zhuowen as if she was looking at some kind of rare treasure, which made Zhuowen a little surprised. And I am the Abyss Master, the supreme ruler of the entire Abyss Realm, Leng Liming, the Abyss Master said with a faint smile. Zhuowen looked at the Abyss Master in silence. After a moment of silence, he said, Abyss Master, I heard from Sir God Danjun that you wanted to meet me in person. May I know what is the matter? The Abyss Master stared at Zhuowen with bright eyes and said, I am looking for you to save the people of the 100 Outer Territories. Zhuowen's pupils shrank slightly. He did not understand what the Abyss Master meant. Save the people of the 100 Outer Territories? What is going on? If you want to talk about Divine Soul Supreme with more like-minded people, follow excellent reading literature on WeChat. Talk about life, find Confidence Tilda. Chapter 4654. What do you mean, Lord of the Deep Abyss? Zhuowen frowned slightly. How did it have anything to do with the common people of the world again? Could it be that a great calamity was about to befall the 100 Territories? The Lord of the Deep Abyss sighed. It's normal that you don't know about this. After all, at your current level, you're still far from being able to come into contact with the true secrets of the 100 domains. Secrets? Zhuowen murmured in a low voice, and his expression became quite serious. Speaking of which, after entering the 100 domains, he really had never come into contact with any secrets of the 100 domains. He only knew that the rise of the 100 domains was due to the fall of an ancient god from the ancient star. In addition, he only had a vague idea of whether there were other places similar to the 100 domains outside the vast chaotic starry sky, but he didn't know at all. Of course, his biggest doubt was actually what the primordial chaos tree and the ancient star were, and whether there was some unknown relationship between the two. Yes, this secret is related to the life and death of all living beings in the 100 domains. The Lord of the Deep Abyss's expression became extremely serious. Zhuowen knew that the Lord of the Deep Abyss should be about to get to the point. He pricked up his ears and listened silently. You should know that the chaotic starry sky is extremely vast, and there are many floating aggregations of continents similar to the 100 domains in the chaotic starry sky. The Lord of the Deep Abyss stared at Zhuowen and continued, Then have you also seen fragments of continents in the chaotic starry sky? Zhuowen didn't know what the Lord of the Deep Abyss meant, but he still nodded subconsciously. He had entered the chaotic starry sky several times, so he naturally knew that the chaotic starry sky didn't lack these continent fragments. Then do you know that when these continent fragments were complete, they were the same as the 100 domains in the outer domain, an aggregation of continents where countless vigorous living beings lived? the Lord of the Deep Abyss said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He already had some guesses. There were so many continent fragments floating in the chaotic starry sky. In fact, like the 100 domains in the outer domain, countless living beings used to live there. Then what was the reason for it to become a lifeless fragment of the continent? What caused those continents to break into fragments? Zhuowen finally asked the question in his heart. If those fragments were really as large as the 100 outer realms, what kind of power could destroy the aggregation of the entire 100 outer realms? Even if it was a powerhouse with all techniques returned to one, he probably wouldn't be able to do it. The Lord of the Deep Abyss said with a trembling voice, "It's the immeasurable calamity." The moment the immeasurable tribulation was brought up, the eyes of the Pill Formation Divine Lord, Talisman Master, and Talisman Master narrowed as if they had seen something terrifying. Immeasurable calamity? Zhuowen was confused. This was the first time he had heard of this so-called immeasurable tribulation. However, this calamity was able to destroy an aggregation of continents similar to the 100 outer realms. From this, one could see how terrifying its might was. It's normal that you don't know about the immeasurable calamity. After all, this calamity is far too ancient. It involves the birth and decline of countless realms in the chaotic universe. The Lord of the Deep Abyss patiently explained this so-called immeasurable calamity to Zhuowen. As the Lord of the Deep Abyss continued to narrate, Zhuowen gradually understood the history of the 100 outer realms and the chaotic universe. When the chaotic universe was first formed, it gradually evolved into a starry sky. This was the most primitive chaotic universe. The chaotic universe was actually a misty state formed by the fusion of chi, form, and substance. After the chaotic universe was separated, chi was scattered throughout the chaotic universe, turning into all kinds of energy, such as spiritual chi, vital chi, divine power, and so on. Form floated up and hung at the highest point of the chaotic universe, forming an ancient star that had existed since time immemorial. Substance sank and fell to the bottom of the chaotic universe, taking root and growing into the primordial chaos tree. This was the origin of the entire chaotic universe. Everything came from the chaotic universe. The chi scattered in the chaotic universe continued to evolve and began to form all kinds of energy, laws, and even substances. Substances continued to condense and turn into continents. And within the continents, after continuous evolution, living beings began to appear. These living beings had a unique sensitivity to chi, and they began to absorb chi to temper themselves. In the beginning, the cultivation of living beings was very shallow, but as time passed, living beings also continued to evolve and improve their cultivation methods. Many talented living beings even began to create their own cultivation methods and establish all kinds of forces. Thus, all kinds of civilizations and races were formed on the various continents. And where there were living beings, there would naturally be disputes. Many living beings needed to establish their forces to expand, so they would begin to invade and fight, and eventually lead to all kinds of bloody massacres. This was not uncommon in history. In addition to man-made disasters, there were even more terrifying natural disasters. And natural disasters were the immeasurable calamities. The immeasurable calamities descended from the ancient star system, and they basically targeted the continents that had existed for a long time. Continents also had cycles. Newly formed continents were full of vitality and had very few living beings, but as time passed, more and more living beings appeared, until the entire continent was filled with living beings. And at this time, the immeasurable calamities would descend upon the ancient star system, destroying this continent, and then evolving into a new continent. This cycle repeated endlessly, just like the birth, aging, illness, and death of humans. However, an extremely long time ago, all the rules changed. For some reason, the immeasurable calamities began to descend upon the ancient star system. Whether it was newly formed continents or continents at the peak of their power, all of them were enveloped by the immeasurable calamities. Continents began to collapse one after another, and living beings were plunged into misery and suffering, with countless deaths and injuries. Back then, there was a continent that became a blind spot of the immeasurable calamities because of the fall of an ancient god, thereby avoiding the terrifying destruction of the immeasurable calamities. And that continent was the region where the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy was located. Later on, many continents discovered this rule and began to converge toward that continent. In the end, with that continent as the center, the present 100 domains were formed. Since it's protected by the aura of that fallen ancient god, the immeasurable calamities probably won't descend upon the 100 domains again. Zhuowen raised the question in his heart. The 100 domains had gone through countless years without being discovered by the immeasurable calamities, so why did the Abyss Master say that the 100 domains were facing a great calamity? The Abyss Master shook his head and said, "That's what I thought before. But in the past 100 years, our great speech soul master has used his lifespan to predict a scene in the future. The scene described the immeasurable calamities falling upon the outer realm, the 100 domains. I suspect that the ancient god may not have died, but has reawakened and has begun to gradually absorb and conceal his aura. In this way, the immeasurable calamities will discover the 100 domains. At that time, countless living beings in the 100 domains will not be able to escape the fate of perishing in the immeasurable calamities." Zhuowen frowned slightly and suddenly said, "Abyss Master, the immeasurable calamities are so powerful, but what does it have to do with me?" Zhuowen was still very puzzled. The immeasurable calamities were terrifying things that could easily destroy the 100 domains, so why did the Abyss Master specifically look for him? "Because you were born without a Tao root, and you have the primordial stone," the Abyss Master said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Zhuowen's expression froze, and he could not help but take a few steps back, coldly looking at the Abyss Master. Chapter 4655. In the main hall. The atmosphere was stagnant. Zhuowen stood in the middle of the main hall with a gloomy look in his eyes and did not say a word. However, huge waves were surging in his heart, and he was extremely restless. The primordial stone was his biggest secret. No one except Ma Yujie had ever discovered it. However, the Master of the Abyss and the others had known about it a long time ago. This made Zhuowen feel uncomfortable. After recovering from the shock, Zhuowen slowly calmed down. He was well aware of his own capabilities. Now that he had entered Abyss City, if the Abyss Master had any ill intentions towards him, he would not be able to escape at all. Moreover, the Master of the Abyss had said that he had been paying attention to him since he entered the 100 territories. If he wanted to snatch the primordial stone, he would have done so long ago. Why wait until now? The Master of the Abyss stood there quietly. After mentioning the primordial stone, he had been observing Zhuowen. He could not help but nod to himself when he realized that Zhuowen had calmed down quickly after the initial shock. "Master of the Abyss, tell me, what does saving the 100 territories have to do with my supreme Tao root and the primordial stone?" Zhuowen said indifferently. The Divine Lord of the Pillar Ray took a deep look at Zhuowen and secretly praised Zhuowen's temperament. No wonder he could achieve so much in such a short time. It was not unreasonable for the primordial stone to choose him. The Great Talisman Master Pu Chengju and the Great Talisman Master Bai Shuyuan also looked at Zhuowen with admiration. They were obviously satisfied with Zhuowen's performance. The Master of the Abyss took a deep look at Zhuowen and said, "Zhuowen, do you know how the primordial stone came about?" Zhuowen shook his head. He knew very little about the primordial stone. The primordial stone was the stone that nurtured the seed of the primordial tree when the chaos first formed. After the primordial tree sprouted and broke out of the stone broke into 4 pieces. These 4 stones contain a portion of the essence of the primordial grand mist tree's seed, which transformed into the current primordial grand mist stones. The person who possesses the primordial grand mist stone must have been acknowledged by the primordial grand mist tree. Since you've been in possession of the primordial grand mist stone until now, it means that you've been acknowledged by the primordial grand mist tree. The Lord of the Deep Abyss looked at Zhuowen with bright eyes, unable to hide his excitement. Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he asked in astonishment, "Does that mean that those who haven't obtained the primordial grand mist tree's recognition aren't qualified to obtain the primordial grand mist stone?" The Abyss Master nodded and said, "Yes. Those who are unable to obtain the primordial grand mist tree's acknowledgement will be left by the primordial grand mist stone." It will not stay for long, so you can be at ease. Since you're the owner of the Primeval Primordial Stone, then only you have the qualifications to possess it. We'll absolutely not fight for it. That's because we've never been acknowledged by the primordial Hongmeng tree. Zhuowen felt strange, and he couldn't help but think of Ma Yujie. He remembered very clearly that this Ma Yujie also possessed a primordial Grand Mist Stone. Furthermore, he wasn't rejected by the primordial Grand Mist Stone at all. Could it be that the primordial Grand Mist Stone can only be possessed by one person? Can't two people possess it at the same time? Zhuowen still asked the doubts in his heart. Absolutely impossible. The primordial Grand Mist Stone can only recognize one person as its master. It's absolutely impossible for two people to possess it at the same time, the Lord of the Deep Abyss said with certainty. There's a possibility. Suddenly, the great word Spirit Master Bai Shuyuan spoke. Everyone's gazes converged on Bai Shuyuan. If it's a life form from the lower realm or chaotic starry skies, they indeed need to obtain the primordial Grand Mist Tree's acknowledgement if they want to obtain the primordial Grand Mist Stone. But if it's a supreme existence from the primordial star system, if they obtain the primordial Grand Mist Stone, they don't need to be acknowledged by the primordial Grand Mist Tree and can use the primordial Grand Mist Stone's power at will. Bai Shuyuan's eyes were solemn as she continued, I've also read about this from ancient books. As for whether it's true or false, I have no way of verifying it. The great talisman master Pu Chengju shrugged and said, a supreme existence from the primordial star system, that's another matter. That's too far away from us. All right. There's no need to argue. The Abyss Master waved his sleeve, and Pu Chengju and Bai Shuyuan hurriedly shut their mouths. On the other hand, Zhuowen fell into deep thought. If what Bai Shuyuan said was true, then he was already certain that Ma Yujie came from the primordial star system. However, he was puzzled. If Ma Yujie was really a god from the primordial star system, then why was he reduced to the lower realm's starry skies? Also, Ma Yujie had once told him that he gathered the primordial Grand Mist Stone to re-enter the primordial star system. Then why did he return to the primordial Grand Mist Stone? All these mysteries were like questions that pressed down on Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen rubbed his temples, and his eyes suddenly became as sharp as a knife. He muttered in a low voice, looks like it's time to have a good talk with Ma Yujie. Zhuowen. The terror of the immeasurable calamity is far from what the 100 outer realms can resist. If you want to resist the immeasurable calamity, you can only rely on the power of the primordial Grand Mist Tree. The Abyss Master looked at Zhuowen again and said, You mean, you want me to use the primordial Grand Mist Stone to borrow the power of the primordial Grand Mist Tree to resist the immeasurable calamity descending from the primordial star system? Zhuowen immediately understood what the Abyss Master meant. Yes, this is the only way to resist the immeasurable calamity that Shuyuan predicted. The Abyss Master said in a deep voice. How long until the immeasurable calamity descends? Zhuowen asked unhurriedly. Only 1,000 years left. After 1,000 years, the immeasurable calamity will descend on the 100 outer realms and completely destroy the last pure land in the chaotic starry skies. Bai Shuyuan said in a trembling voice. Zhuowen nodded and said in a low voice, Then how should I borrow the power of the primordial Grand Mist Tree? To resist the immeasurable calamity. The Abyss Master said a little awkwardly, We know very little about the primordial Grand Mist Stone, so we really don't know. Zhuowen was speechless. Didn't this mean that he would have to figure out everything on his own? However, you can rest assured. The Abyss Realm will fully support you. No matter what, these 1,000 years are the final days of the 100 outer realms' survival. The Abyss Master said with a deep look in his eyes. Zhuowen thought for a moment and continued, Regarding the descent of the immeasurable calamity, who else besides us knows about it? The Abyss Master shook his head and said, Only we know. This matter is of great importance. We don't intend to spread it immediately before it's completely confirmed. Abyss Master. Zhuowen's cultivation is still too low. Why don't we help him raise his cultivation to lawful embodiment of heaven and earth first? Otherwise, even if he has the primordial Grand Mist Stone, he won't be able to resist the immeasurable calamity because he's too weak. The pill formation divine lord suddenly walked out and suggested to the Abyss Master with a bow. The Abyss Master nodded and said, "Divine Lord is right. I'll open my Abyss Secret Realm for our young friend Zhuoan to cultivate as he pleases." The Abyss Secret Realm. The pill formation divine lord, Bai Shuyuan, and Pu Chengju were all shocked. Chapter 4656. The night wind was icy cold, but Shun Xiin's face carried a warm smile that had never been seen before. In her hand was a brand new scarf that Chu Qingwan had given to her. It was the first time she had received a gift from a friend. She tenderly held it tight. Friend, she took a deep breath. In the last moments of her life, she actually had a friend. Pushing open the door in front of her, the smile on her face abruptly froze. On the sofa, a man sat with his slender legs crossed. His icy eyes looked over with a dark chill. Zhong Han. Shun Xiin's face quickly paled. How did I do what? Xiao Zhong Han stood up and grabbed her neck with one hand, staring at her intently. How could this marshal not know that his young marshal's wife, not returning in the middle of the night, is hooking up with another man outside? As he spoke, he exerted force and pulled Shun Xiin over. Bang! Shun Xiin was thrown to the front of the sofa. Her knees hit the ground, but her hand subconsciously protected her lower abdomen. Xiao Zhong Han's gaze became even colder. He grabbed her hair and his dark gaze fell on her face. "Speak, which wild man gave this to you?" He was referring to the scarf that looked expensive at first glance. Shun Xiin's face was pale. It was Miss Chu who gave it to me. "I am with her, Chu Qingwan." The man sneered. "When did Qingwan get so close to you? How could she fancy someone like you?" Shun Xiin's face was deathly pale. "It's true. If you don't believe me, you can ask Miss Chu." Phut! Xiao Zhong Han's lips curled into a mocking smile. He naturally did not believe that Chu Qingwan had a good relationship with Shun Xiin, so good that she would give her a gift. His cold gaze stared fixedly at Shun Xiin's face. The aura around his body became colder and colder. This woman actually dared to deceive him, dared to lie to him. Thinking of this, Xiao Zhong Han's heart surged with boundless anger. Without saying a word, he pulled Shun Xiin's arm and slid his fingers down her cheek. There was no gentleness, only violence. A cold wind blew from an unknown place and Shun Xiin's entire body was ice cold. No. She was incomparably frightened and used all her strength to resist. "I don't want to." She now had a child and could not let anything happen to her child. But the more she resisted and the more she used all her strength, the more the flames of anger in Xiao Zhong Han's heart burned. Damn it. During this period of time, he had been busy with the southern expedition. This woman actually dared to take advantage of his absence to frequently go out. Even today, she had not returned for the entire day. She always pretended to be deeply in love with him, but behind his back, this woman really disgusted him. Now, she actually dared to openly bring gifts from a wild man to the young marshal's mansion. He sneered and held her hand in place, showing no mercy as Shun Xiin screamed in horror. What was there to show mercy to such a woman? Chapter 4657. In the secret land of the Abyss, other than this pool, the other places are extremely dangerous. Zhuo Xiaoyu, when you cultivate here, don't leave the pool out of curiosity. Do you understand? When the Lord of the Abyss led Zhuoan, Sir Pilaray, and the others back to the pool, he looked at Zhuoan and said seriously, "You too." After reminding Zhuoan, the Lord of the Abyss looked at Sir Pilaray and the others and reminded them again. "Don't worry, Lord of the Abyss. We won't wander off," Sir Pilaray said with a smile. Pu Chengju and Bai Shuyuan also promised. "You can build any cave abode you want on this pool." The Lord of the Abyss nodded. He waved his sleeve and several water pillars shot up from the pool. They froze into ice and turned into a magnificent crystal palace. "From now on, you can do whatever you want. If you need anything, just use the token to contact me." The Lord of the Abyss looked at Zhuoan and disappeared from the secret land of the Abyss after saying that. The secret land of the Abyss is indeed impressive. The chaotic energy is so rich. The entire pool is formed by high-quality chaotic energy. Sir Pilaray, Pu Chengju, and Bai Shuyuan stood on the pool and couldn't help but exclaim, "Ha ha! It's all thanks to Zhuo Xiaoyu. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have the chance to cultivate in the secret land of the abyss. Divine Lord Danzhen laughed. Pu Chengju and Bai Shuyuan hurriedly nodded as well. Their gazes towards Zhuo Wen were filled with gratitude. Zhuo Xiaoyu, now that you are the key to resisting the immeasurable calamity, you can cultivate here. If you have any questions about cultivation, we will answer them for you. Sir Pillaray looked at Zhuo Wen and smiled. Yes. The three of us are here to assist you. Sir Pillaray can set up powerful formations and refine divine elixirs to help you with your cultivation. Pu Chengju is an expert in talismans, and he can use all kinds of talismans to strengthen your divine weapons and armor. Bai Shuyuan smiled and continued, to a certain extent, I can predict your cultivation situation and use you to predict the correct way to use the primordial stone. This will help you master the primordial stone faster. Zhuo Wen nodded to himself when he heard that. He had to admit that the Lord of the Abyss was indeed very thoughtful. Whether it was the Pillaray Divine Lord, Pu Chengju, or Bai Shuyuan, they were all top godmasters in the outer 100 domains. With the help of these three people, Zhuo Wen's strength would probably increase by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. Oh, right. Senior White, I have a friend who admires you very much and wants to meet you. Zhuo Wen suddenly thought of Shan Lingyun and couldn't help but ask Bai Shuyuan. Bai Shuyuan was taken aback. Then, she revealed an amiable smile and said, Of course. Where is your friend? It's in my great world. As Zhuo Wen spoke, he waved his sleeve and summoned Shan Lingyun. Disciple. Where is this place? When Shan Lingyun came out, she looked around and realized that she was surrounded by a deep pool. Her eyes were filled with confusion. Above the deep pool, there were three strangers that she did not recognize. Zhuo Wen smiled and introduced the Pillaray Divine Lord, Pu Chengju, and Bai Shuyuan to Shan Lingyun. Especially after knowing that Bai Shuyuan was the great speech spiritual master of the Abyss domain, Shan Lingyun was so excited that her face turned red. She was at a loss. Senior White, hello, I am also a speech spiritual master. I have admired you for a long time, but I didn't expect to meet you in person. Shan Lingyun looked at Bai Shuyuan with her big eyes and said the words in her heart shyly. Bai Shuyuan looked at Shan Lingyun silently and nodded in approval. Child, you are called Shan Lingyun, right? Your talent in speech spiritual masters is really powerful. I have seen countless speech spiritual masters, but none of them are as talented as you. Ah, Senior White, you are too kind. My talent is just average. Shan Lingyun's face turned red from the compliments. Bai Shuyuan shook her head and said seriously, Your talent is not average. If I am not wrong, you are born with the speech spiritual physique. You were born to speak spiritual word. What? Speech spiritual physique? This is a rare physique that is hard to come by. There is such a physique in this world. The Pillaray Divine Lord was shocked. Pu Chengju said suspiciously, Junior Sister Bai, are you suffering from presbyopia? You are the one who is presbyopic. I have cultivated the speech spiritual technique for so many years, but I have never seen it before. Bai Shuyuan snorted and looked at Shan Lingyun. She said enthusiastically, Child, do you want to be my disciple? Ah, can I really? Shan Lingyun still had not figured out what was going on. She did not even know what a speech spiritual physique was. Of course, if you become my disciple, I dare to swear that you will surpass me in the future. Be my disciple. Bai Shuyuan said anxiously. Speech spiritual physique was too rare. How could Bai Shuyuan let it go? Shan Lingyun's face turned red. She nodded and knelt down. Master, I am willing. Haha. You will be my good disciple in the future. Bai Shuyuan smiled and her eyes were filled with joy. Junior Sister Bai is so lucky. You actually got a disciple with the speech spiritual physique. Pu Chengju said emotionally. Senior Sister Bai should be thanking Zhuo Xiaoyu. After all, this disciple was brought in by Zhuo Xiaoyu. The Pillaray Divine Lord smiled. Bai Shuyuan looked at Zhuo Wen and said, Zhuo Xiaoyu, I will not say any more words of thanks. If you need me for anything in the future, I, Bai Shuyuan, will not reject you. Zhuo Wen smiled and said, Senior Bai, you are too kind. My master admires you. She is 100% willing to be your disciple. This is her good fortune. You are too kind to thank me. Bai Shuyuan looked at Zhuo Wen with a smile that was not a smile and said, Little friend Zhuo, you seem to be calling my disciple master. Now that Lingyun is my disciple, shouldn't you call me grandmaster? Zhuo Wen touched his nose awkwardly. Haha. I will not joke with you anymore. Now, it is time to get down to business. Bai Shuyuan smiled. Next, Bai Shuyuan, Pu Chengju, and the Pillar Divine Lord started to build their cave abode above the deep pool. In order to help Zhuo Wen cultivate, the three of them planned to stay here for a long time. Shan Lingyun also knew about the immeasurable calamity and Zhuo Wen from Bai Shuyuan. She was very obedient and helped to build the cave abode. When the cave abode was completed, Zhuo Wen sat cross-legged in his cave abode. Primordial skill. Open. Zhuo Wen took a deep breath and activated the primordial skill without hesitation. A large amount of chaotic energy in the deep pool surged into Zhuo Wen's body like a tsunami. Boom. 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 The deep pool was completely activated by Zhuo Wen, and a terrifying tsunami was formed. In an instant, the originally quiet secret realm of the abyss was completely destroyed by Zhuo Wen. Chapter 4658. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. Within the abyss, Divine Lord Pill Formation, Pu Chengju, and Bai Shuyuan floated silently in midair while their gazes converged onto Zhuo Wen's abode. Zhuo Xiaoyou's aura is growing stronger and stronger. I think he's about to break through. Bai Shuyuan's eyes were calm like water as she spoke in a low voice. Junior Sister Bai, you said that kid's heavenly transformation tribulation is even more terrifying than the myriad technique unification tribulation. Is that true? Why do I feel that your words aren't reliable at all? Pu Chengju gazed at Bai Shuyuan and spoke with a doubtful expression. Earlier, Bai Shuyuan had predicted that Zhuo Wen would break through today, and the tribulation would be even more terrifying than the myriad technique unification tribulation. This caused Pu Chengju to feel slight disbelief. The myriad technique unification tribulation could absolutely be described as obliterating the heavens and the earth, yet Zhuo Wen's heavenly transformation was even more terrifying than that tribulation. If one didn't witness it with one's own eyes, it was truly difficult to believe. Bai Shuyuan said indifferently, it doesn't matter if you don't believe it. Just watch carefully later. We've still underestimated this kid. His potential is even greater than we expected. No wonder he was able to break through the restrictions of the Supreme Tao root and obtain the acknowledgement of the Primeval Primordial Stone. When he saw Bai Shuyuan's cold expression, Pu Chengju sensibly shut his mouth. Crack. Suddenly, Zhuo Wen's abode suddenly shattered apart, and then a vast and terrifying aura whistled out like an enraged dragon. The entire pool was stirred up by this terrifying aura, and it caused countless dense and enormous pillars of water to rise up. Within the countless pillars of water, a figure that was like a spear stood within the pool, and his hair and clothes fluttered without any wind. This figure was exactly Zhuo Wen. I'm finally about to break through to the heavenly transformation. Zhuo Wen raised his head and looked towards the sky above the abyss. In the pitch-black sky, one black hole after another gradually tore open. It was as if numerous pitch-black eyes were silently staring at Zhuo Wen. Even though this was the abyss, the heavenly transformation tribulation was everywhere, and it would appear in any space according to the aura of the person overcoming the tribulation. After seeing these densely packed black holes, Zhuo Wen's heart trembled slightly, and a sense of horror rose in his heart. He actually felt an unprecedented fear of death in these black holes that filled the sky. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth tribulation is indeed terrifying. He hasn't even descended, but is already giving me a feeling of fear. Zhuo Wen's heart trembled as he muttered to himself. Zhuo Wen believed that if he relied on himself and used all his trump cards, he would be able to survive this calamity, but the price he would have to pay would be extremely heavy. I hope the Lord of the Abyss didn't lie to me, Zhuo Wen thought to himself as he looked at the endless abyss outside the pool. Back then, the Lord of the Abyss had once said that there would be something in the Abyss secret realm that would help him resist the calamity, but he didn't know whether it was true or not. Crackle. Suddenly, countless bolts of blood-red lightning descended from the black holes in the sky. Each of the blood-red thunderbolts was dozens of meters thick. In an instant, countless blood-red lightning bolts descended. The entire abyss was filled with blood-red lightning bolts. It was like a blood-red prison. D*MN. This kid is indeed extraordinary. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth tribulation is too powerful. By Xu Yuan, Pu Chengju, Divine Master Pilaray, and Shan Lingyun had already moved to the edge of the abyss. Pu Chengju turned pale with fright. I've already said that this kid's calamity can't be treated lightly like the other cultivators. Even if we were to fall into this calamity, it would be extremely troublesome. Bai Shuyuan said calmly. Pu Chengju nodded continuously like a chick pecking at rice. He was completely convinced by Zhuowen's calamity. Rip! Countless bolts of blood-red lightning instantly gathered on Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen's face changed greatly. Just as he was about to use the Shentian handprint to resist the bolts of blood-red lightning, an earth-shattering roar suddenly came from the depths of the abyss. Then, Zhuowen was shocked to see a huge tail whizzing out from the abyss and swinging heavily on the bolts of blood-red lightning. Continuous popping sounds could be heard in the air, and the endless blood-red thunderbolts were directly dispersed. After the huge tail had dissipated the bolts of blood-red lightning, it whizzed past and returned to the darkness of the abyss. Zhuowen saw it clearly. The huge tail was more like a dragon's tail. Its surface was covered with cold and sharp scales. It looked terrifying and eerie. It seems that the rumor is true. The master of the abyss really trapped those things in the abyss. I thought that he had killed them all. Divine Master Pilaray said in a low voice as he looked at the huge tail that had retreated into the darkness of the abyss. Although that tribe had crazily invaded the 100 territories and committed a heinous crime, there was nothing they could do. But there's nothing they can do about it. After all, their continent has been destroyed by the immeasurable calamity. They have to find a new continent. Bai Shuyuan sighed softly and said, the master of the abyss said that they were not the ones in the wrong. The ones in the wrong were the immeasurable calamity and the Archean star. So, that tribe was sealed in the abyss. Master. What are those things that you are talking about? Shan Lingyun asked curiously. You will know when you continue watching. As Zhuo Xiaoyou's calamity becomes more and more powerful, those things will show up sooner or later. Bai Shuyuan said calmly. Shan Lingyun nodded as if she understood. Her eyes were fixed on the abyss. Boom, boom, boom. After the blood-red lightning had been dissipated by the huge tail, another wave of calamity poured down from the countless black holes in the sky. All kinds of tribulation energies fell like a torrential storm. It was as if the calamity had been angered by the huge tail. The calamity that descended this time was several times more powerful. Zhuowen looked up. His heart was beating extremely fast and his eyelids were twitching violently. The second wave of calamity was much more terrifying than the first wave of calamity. It covered the entire sky and instantly filled Zhuowen's eyes. This wave of calamity was too terrifying. If Zhuowen wanted to resist it, he would have to give it his all. This is only the second wave. Zhuowen was completely shocked. The calamity of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was far more terrifying than he had expected. All kinds of calamity energy, such as ice, fire, lightning, and so on, came one after another and instantly covered the entire abyss. As far as the eye could see, it was filled with multicolored calamities and terrifying energy ripples. Roar. At the moment when the second wave of calamity descended, an earth-shattering roar erupted from the abyss under the abyss. Then, a huge golden dragon claw soared into the sky and appeared above Zhuowen. In an instant, a terrifying energy explosion occurred in the entire space. Then, Zhuowen was shocked to see that the terrifying second wave of calamity had all dissipated. Dragon claw? Zhuowen looked at the dragon claw that was slowly retreating into the abyss, and his eyes widened. Was there a true dragon hidden in the abyss? Chapter 4659. Boom, 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 boom. In the secret land of the abyss, the calamities became more and more terrifying. Every time a calamity descended, Zhuowen did not have to do anything. The real dragon in the abyss would block the calamities on behalf of Zhuowen. Zhuowen also realized that as the calamities became more and more powerful, the real dragon in the abyss gradually revealed its true form. At first, it was its tail. Then, it was its claws. Finally, it was a huge dragon head. The last calamity is coming. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and could not help but raise his head to look at the countless black holes that filled the sky. There were countless terrifying calamities in the black holes. There were calamities of wind, thunder, fire, earth, and various other calamities. Every calamity that was brewing emitted a terrifying and magnificent aura that made people tremble in fear. Master, are there real dragons in the abyss? Shan Lingyun's big eyes stared intently at the darkness in the deep abyss. She could not help but raise her head and ask Bai Shuyuan curiously. Yes. To be more precise, the last descendant of the dragon tribe is sealed below. Bai Shuyuan said with a complicated look. The last descendant of the dragon tribe. Shan Lingyun narrowed her eyes and started to ponder. The last calamity is about to begin. Suddenly, Divine Lord Pilaray's eyes lit up and he said in a low voice. Bai Shuyuan, Pu Chengju, and Shan Lingyun also quickly looked up. As expected, the calamities that were brewing in the black holes had reached their limit. Rumble. In an instant, countless terrifying catastrophes burst out from the countless black holes at the same time and fell down together. The entire lake was shrouded in tribulation energy. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing but dense tribulation energy. It was dazzling and terrifying. Zhuowen's heart went cold. The last wave of the tribulation was too terrifying, and even if it was him, he might not have the confidence to overcome it if he utilized all his trump cards. Roar, roar, roar. The moment the last wave of calamity descended, deafening dragon roars suddenly came from the bottom of the abyss. The true dragons hidden in the darkness of the abyss leaped up and soared into the sky, facing the endless calamities. Zhuowen couldn't help but feel shocked when he saw the dragons soaring into the sky. He did not expect that there would be so many true dragons living in the abyss. Each of these true dragons was millions of feet long. What Zhuowen feared the most was that the true dragon, the leader of the dragons, was over 10 million feet in size. This true dragon was covered in golden scales and emitted a dazzling golden light that was difficult to look at directly. Especially that world-shaking dragon might, it caused Zhuowen's heart to tremble with fear, and his heart thumped extremely quickly. There was no doubt that this golden dragon, the leader of the dragons, was definitely a powerhouse of the 10,000 methods to one, and it was no ordinary 10,000 methods to one. Roar. The huge golden dragon roared at the sky, and the sound waves formed by the dragon's roar exploded. The countless dragons that followed the golden dragon all responded, letting out dragon roars that shook the heavens and the earth, shocking the world. They are all blocking the sky above my disciple, using their dragon bodies to block this final wave of calamity. Shan Lingyun's eyes widened. She immediately saw through the true intentions of these dragons. The dragon race's physical body is much stronger than that of the human race. This is their innate talent. This last wave of calamity of Zhuowen's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth is really too terrifying. These dragons have no choice but to use their physical bodies to block it. Bai Shuyuan's eyes flickered as she sighed softly. This is also considered as the dragon race's forgiveness. After all, they committed heinous crimes back then and caused the deaths of so many cultivators in the 100 domains outside the world. Pu Chengju said calmly. Bang! Bang! The last wave of calamity finally landed and blasted countless true dragons. The entire space erupted with ear-piercing and dense collisions. Many weaker dragons couldn't withstand this wave of calamity. Their skin and flesh were lacerated, and they let out shrill cries as they fell into the depths of the abyss. As for the powerful dragons, they began to protect the weaker dragons, blocking most of the calamities. As for the Golden Dragon King, it rushed to the highest point alone and blocked the most terrifying calamity. Countless calamities landed on the Golden Dragon King's body and blasted open huge wounds. Golden blood splattered and scattered across the entire sky as if it was raining golden blood. However, The Golden Dragon King's physical body was really too strong. The countless wounds that were opened by the calamities gradually healed as time passed. It was as good as new. One had to admit that the Golden Dragon King was indeed extremely powerful. It actually blocked most of the calamities. When the last calamity was completely blocked by the Golden Dragon King, the black holes in the sky gradually dissipated. The terrifying power of heaven and earth also gradually disappeared. The entire mystic abyss regained its tranquility and peace. Boom, boom, boom. Zhuowen stood in the middle of the deep pool. His body was gilded with gold and flashed with purple and gold radiance. The aura in his body was like an erupting volcano. It continuously swept across and became stronger. Soon, it rose to the highest point. This is the power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Zhuowen roared into the sky. His roar was earth-shattering, and endless water pillars connected heaven and earth. Creak, creak. Zhuowen's body grew taller by 10 feet. 1 million feet, 5 million feet, 10 million feet, 3 million feet, until he reached 9 million feet. Zhuowen's body finally stopped growing and stood in the sky. This guy is indeed not ordinary. He has just attained the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, and his body is already 9 million feet tall. He even has an aura. This is too terrifying. Pu Chengju exclaimed in shock. Bai Shuyuan, Sir God Danaray, and Shan Lingyun were all stunned by Zhuowen's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It was already very impressive for an ordinary cultivator's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth to be 10 million feet tall. However, Zhuowen's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was 9 times bigger than an ordinary one. Its aura was as deep and mysterious as a mountain and as deep as the sea. The appearance of Zhuowen's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was 90% similar to himself. It was the image of a young man and looked ordinary. However, it contained unbelievably powerful energy. Zhuowen's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth stood between heaven and earth and silently looked at the Golden Dragon King in the sky. The Golden Dragon King also looked down at Zhuowen, its huge dragon eyes flickering with flickering light. A man and a dragon looked at each other without saying a word. Thank you. Zhuowen cupped his fists at the Golden Dragon King. The huge lawful embodiment of heaven and earth gradually dissipated and he returned to his original form. The Golden Dragon King seemed to understand Zhuowen's words. It let out a dragon roar and dived into the darkness of the deep abyss. In the blink of an eye, the whole world returned to its usual calm. Zhuo Xiaoyu. Congratulations. Congratulations. The Divine Lord of Pillar Ray, Bai Shuyuan, and the other two immediately came forward to congratulate Zhuowen. Chapter 4660. He took off his boots, washed up, and got into bed. That night, without Shen Xiyin by his side, Xiao Zhonghan felt that he slept especially well. It wasn't until late the next day that he was awakened by the soft footsteps of the servants outside. Getting out of bed, his eyes were still drowsy. Looking up, he saw that the hands of the quartz clock had already reached 10. Damn it, where was that woman? Why didn't she wake him up earlier? After cursing in his heart, Xiao Zhonghan suddenly froze. He remembered that the woman seemed to have run away last night. In the middle of the night, the world was not peaceful. She didn't know many people here, so where could she have gone? Moreover, she had been spoiled since childhood and had never seen the suffering of the world. Xiao Zhonghan sneered, waiting for Shen Xiyin to obediently roll back. He first went to Shen Xingyue's place to accompany her for breakfast. After comforting her for a while, Xiao Zhonghan took a car to the general office. The young commander was ruthless and decisive in his actions. The soldiers under his command were like iron poles in his hands. When he walked in, no one dared to raise their heads to look at him, even if this person's status was once lower than theirs. From the outer circle of errand runners to the young commander who held real power, everyone envied him for meeting Shen Chenghe, except for himself. Sitting in the large, custom-made chair, he didn't have time to do anything before the door was pushed open from the outside. Lerong winked as he looked him up and down. Oh, which beauty was so beautiful last night that even our young commander Xiao couldn't bear to get out of bed? Larong and Xiao Zhonghan were true brothers who had gone through life and death. The two were originally from Shuncheng, his outer circle, and had gone out on missions together for several years. Later, when Xiao Zhonghan became the young commander, he also asked for Larong. In front of him, Larong never knew what was high or low status and did not pay attention to the way he spoke. Brothers were brothers. Xiao Zhonghan glanced at him. If you have something to do, then get out. Fine, your words are so unpleasant to hear. No wonder people hate you. Larong straightened his expression and put away his careless expression. He threw a letter in his hand onto Xiao Zhonghan's table. Qin Hai had someone deliver this. Speaking of which, did you detain her second concubine? It's not that I want to criticize you, but Shen Xingyue has been married to Qin Hai for so many years. Why do you still think they can't reconcile? Xiao Zhonghan coldly glared. Larong rubbed his nose and didn't dare to continue. However, no one knew more about the matter between Xiao Zhonghan, Shen Xingyue, and Shen Xiyin than Larong. He looked at Xiao Zhonghan's expression and tried to restrain himself, but in the end, he was unable to restrain himself. No matter how good second young Miss Shen is, she's already married. No matter how bad eldest young Miss Shen is, she's still been your wife for several years. Her heart is completely tied to you. Scram. This time, Xiao Zhonghan didn't even bother to look at him and directly kicked him out. Larong was fearless. No matter what, Shen Chenghe had saved him. He had picked him up when he was about to starve to death. To return the favor, he could disregard Shen Xiyin and Xiao Zhonghan's feelings, but he still needed to advise them. Miss Shen is really good to you. I'm so envious. There are so many young men for her to choose from, but she only likes you. All these years, you've embarrassed her in every way, but I've never seen her complain about you. Where could he find such a wife? Before he could finish his sentence, with a whoosh, a high-quality inkstone narrowly brushed past his head and landed on the blanket behind him. He turned around to look. Fortunately, the blanket was thick enough. Smacking his lips, Larong finally obediently rubbed his nose and slipped away when he felt the tangible coldness emanating from Xiao Zhonghan's body. The door closed in front of him. Without Larong's chatter, the air became still again. Chapter 4661. Isn't it possible to perform a C-section? Western doctors are the best at it. As long as my child can hold on to 7 months, he will definitely survive. Shen Xiyin grabbed Chu Qingwan's arm, her eyes flashing with hope. Miss Chu, please help me. You're really crazy. Why should I help you? Chu Qingwan pulled her arm back and looked at her. If the child is gone, you can have another one. If you abort him, you still have a sliver of hope to live. Don't tell me you want your father to see his child die. Shen Xiyin lowered her eyelashes. After a while, she raised her head. I can create the illusion that I ran away. That way, father will feel better. His relationship with Zhonghan is slightly better, so I can't cause trouble at this juncture. So running away myself is the best ending. Chu Qingwan's brows furrowed tightly as she looked at Shen Xiyin. This woman really seemed to be different from what Commander Xiao had said. The current political situation was chaotic. Shen Xiyin's father was the governor and held the military in his hands. Because of Shen Xiyin's relationship with Commander Xiao, the other commanders did not dare to act rashly. But if something really happened to Shen Xiyin, could this kind of balanced situation still be stabilized? It was obvious that Shen Xiyin had also thought of this point. Because of this, she was even willing to silently die. Was this kind of person really the vicious and scheming eldest young miss of the Shen family that Xiao Zhonghan had described? Chu Qingwan's eyes moved. Then what about Commander Xiao? Why don't you let him know? Absolutely not. Panic flashed across Shen Xiyin's pale face. He hates me so much. If he knew that I was pregnant with his child, he would definitely not allow him to live. Miss Chu, I don't ask you to help me. You just have to help me keep this secret. Madam. Chu Qingwan suddenly spoke, interrupting Shen Xiyin. What if I told you that Commander Xiao and I were fake, that it was an act for you to see? He never touched me, yet he made you pregnant with his child. Perhaps, he does care about you a bit. No. Shun Xian's expression was bitter as her fingers stroked her cheek. He touched me only because of my face. Because of Xing Yu, I look very similar to Xing Yu. When we were together, he thought I was her. He didn't touch you because of Xing Yu. From the beginning to the end, she was the one he loved. So, if you die, who will raise your child? Chu Qingwan asked. It was I who let this child down. Shun Xian's eyes dimmed. She could not let her father know that she had risked her life to give birth to this child, nor could she let him become a thorn in Xiao Zhonghan's heart. If he really survives, I would like to ask Miss Chu to help me find a good family to entrust to. I have some private savings, and I will give them to Miss Chu another day. Miss Chu, you can just give some to that family every year. Huh? Chu Qingwan sneered and pulled away Shun Xian's hand that was grabbing her sleeve again. It seems that Madam has thought it through. I really meddled in other people's business and caused a lot of trouble for no reason. Thank you, Miss Chu. Shun Xian's eyes were slightly wet. Although Chu Qingwan was complaining, she was willing to agree. She gently caressed her lower abdomen, her eyes sparkling. Her baby, her baby, her baby with the one she loves. Knock, knock, knock. Chapter 4662. Master God Region, you didn't. Chu Qingwan frowned. Yes. No more dodging, no more dodging. This time, Shun Xian raised her head without showing any weakness and met Chu Qingwan's gaze. This time, she was magnanimous as she said to Chu Qingwan word by word, in the past decade or so, Xiao Zhonghan has hated me, scolded me, and blamed me, but I have never schemed against him. I have never done anything to let him down. Whether you believe it or not, the corners of her mouth curved, and her teary eyes were filled with stubbornness. I have never done it. I only love him. Even if he hates me, resents me, and wishes for nothing more than my death, it has never wavered. Chu Qingwan was stunned. She had once pitied and sympathized with Shun Xian, the wife of the young commander, because of her illness, but she had never liked her. She didn't like her not because of her past viciousness and scheming. Instead, it was because of her cowardice. In front of Commander Xiao, she seemed to always be cowardly and timid. But at this moment, the cowardly and timid Shun Xian in her eyes had a smile on her lips and her back was straight. Xiao Zhonghan hates me and blames me. I can't explain it, and even if I did, he wouldn't believe me. I'm waiting. I thought that as long as I kept waiting, there would be a day when he would believe me of his own accord. Her smile became brighter and more dazzling, but the bitterness at the corners of her mouth was deep. But I'm afraid I won't be able to wait. Her entire body was ice-cold without a trace of warmth. Her stomach twisted in pain and pulled outwards. Fine beads of sweat seeped out from Shun Xian's pale cheeks. Her hands were tightly clenched, and the green veins under her skin were visible to the naked eye. Chu Qingwan's eyes were filled with a complicated expression. She thought Shun Xian was despicable, shameless, selfish, and cowardly. But the Shun Xian in front of her was stubbornly foolish, so stubborn that it made one's heart ache. Was this Shun Xian the Shun Xian she knew? Miss Chu, are you satisfied after hearing this? Do you believe it? Shun Xian gritted her teeth, her body trembling in pain, but she tried her best to endure and even forced a smile. Chu Qingwan took a deep breath. She looked at Shun Xian, but she didn't say whether she believed it or not. Instead, she took out a piece of paper from her bag. What was this? Shun Xian didn't take it. Chu Qingwan stuffed the piece of paper into her hand. This is my sister's attending doctor. He came back from the West. His medical skills are good, and he's also a good person. Shun Xian lowered her head and looked at the contact information. Thank you. Go and take a look. Now, I'll go with you. A trace of self-mockery flashed across Shun Xian's eyes. Miss Chu doesn't believe me. Do you think that I'm lying to you about my illness? She clenched the piece of paper and straightened her back. Whether you believe it or not, what does that have to do with me? She turned around and left. But in the next moment, his body fell to the ground like a butterfly in the wind. In the hospital, everything was pure white. Shun Xian slowly opened her eyes. In the next moment, she saw Chu Qingwan standing beside her with an inexplicable expression. Is this a hospital? Shen Xian's voice was unusually dry and hoarse. Chu Qingwan poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. Thank you. Shen Xian took the water and took a sip. You're pregnant. This one sentence was earth-shattering. The cup in Shen Xian's hand fell on her body, and the water soaked the quilt on her body. Her voice trembled, but it hid her unconcealable ecstasy. What did you say? I'm pregnant. Yes, you're pregnant. The child is already more than 4 months old. It really was hard on her. She had been made difficult by Xiao Zhonghan time and time again, but nothing had happened. You didn't know? Chu Qingwan asked again. No, I didn't know. Shen Xian was still in ecstasy. Chu Qingwan looked at her expression and felt a bit upset. She said, you can't keep this child. No. The corners of Shen Xian's mouth lifted into a smile. She looked up at Chu Qingwan, her eyes shining. I want to keep him. Are you crazy? You have late-stage stomach cancer. You can't give birth. Chu Qingwan was shocked. Chapter 4663. What method? Zhuowen's eyes flickered and he couldn't help but ask. In fact, he wanted to verify if the Lord of the Abyss's method of resisting the infinite calamity was feasible. The immeasurable calamity comes from the primordial star system and is a high-level energy that surpasses any realm in the chaotic starry sky. Nothing in the chaotic starry sky can withstand the immeasurable calamity. Only the primordial stones can withstand the power of the immeasurable calamity. Ma Yujie's expression was calm as he slowly explained the method to resist the immeasurable calamity. Hearing this, Zhuowen was completely relieved. Since the Lord of Deep Caves and Ma Yujie said so, it seemed that this method was indeed feasible. If I gather all the primordial stones, will I be able to mobilize the power of the primordial tree? Zhuowen asked again. Ma Yujie sneered. How can it be so easy? The primordial tree has existed since ancient times. Even the primordial gods in the primordial star system are not qualified to mobilize the power of the primordial tree. Gathering all the primordial stones only means that you have received the recognition of the primordial tree, but if you want to borrow its power, it depends on whether you are qualified. Zhuowen frowned slightly and asked, what do you mean? The primordial tree has great wisdom. After you gather all the primordial stones, you are qualified to enter the primordial tree to undergo the test. Only by successfully passing the test will you have a slight chance of obtaining the qualification to borrow the primordial stones. Ma Yujie shrugged and continued, this is also my guess. The primordial stones are too mysterious. For countless years, no one has gathered all of them. It's really rare for someone to be able to get 2 at once like you. Hearing this, Zhuowen fell into deep thought. He understood that the only way to borrow the power of the primordial tree was to gather all the primordial stones first. Brother Ma, now you should tell me why you want to enter the primordial star system, right? Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie opposite him with a serious expression. Ma Yujie wanted to enter the primordial star system by all means, which had always made Zhuowen very curious. He had once suspected that Ma Yujie was one of the 28 ancient gods, but the latter flatly denied it. He was very curious. If Ma Yujie wasn't an archaic god, why would he go to the archaic star system? Moreover, Ma Yujie seemed to know a lot more than he did, even more than the Lord of the Abyss. It was as if he knew everything. This made Zhuowen even more curious about Ma Yujie's identity. Ma Yujie's eyes flickered as he said in a low voice, I'll tell you the truth after we gather all the primordial stones. How about that? Zhuowen pondered for a moment, nodded, and said, I hope you won't hide anything this time. The 100 outer realms are about to face the immeasurable calamity. Time is running out. I must know the truth. Zhuowen felt that Ma Yujie was hiding a lot of things from him. Ma Yujie's expression was solemn as he sighed softly. Have they discovered the 100 territories so quickly? You're really haunting me. Who are they? Zhuowen hurriedly asked. The truth is often very cruel. Brother Zhuo, for your own good, I suggest that you don't know. Ma Yujie said with an exceptionally serious expression. The 100 Territories is where I currently live, and there are many of my friends and family there. If I don't know the truth, how can I save the 100 Territories? Zhuowen said firmly. Ma Yujie was silent for a moment before saying, if you really want to know, I can tell you everything, but you'll have to wait until we gather all the primordial stone. Although Zhuowen wanted to know the truth as soon as possible, he also knew that haste made waste, so he didn't force Ma Yujie to tell the truth now. All right. Then it's a deal, Zhuowen said solemnly. Brother Zhuo, if you don't have anything else, we can set off for the Master God world immediately. Ma Yujie seemed a little impatient as he looked straight at Zhuowen. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said, it's hard to know whether it's a blessing or a curse when we enter the Master God world this time. Before we go, I'd like to settle some personal grudges. Zhuowen knew very well that any place where the primordial stones existed was bound to be a dangerous place. In such a place, Zhuowen wasn't even confident that he could survive. If anything happened to him, Rika and the Kanglan domain would definitely lose their backbone. The current Kanglan domain was still too weak, and the gap between it and the alternate ghost domain, divine spark domain, and other superdomains was still too great. If the alternate ghost domain, divine spark domain, and other domains that had a grudge against him discovered his relationship with the Kanglan domain, they would definitely go on a killing spree. Therefore, as a precaution, Zhuowen decided to completely settle the grudges between the alternate ghost domain and divine spark domain before searching for the fourth primordial stone. With Zhuowen's current strength, he could almost move unhindered in the super domains, and no one was his match. You want to find those people who chased after you before? Ma Yujie immediately understood Zhuowen's wishful thinking. At that time, after he had tricked Zhuowen, those super domain experts had all chased after Zhuowen. Ma Yujie didn't need to think to know that Zhuowen must have a lot of resentment in his heart. Now that he had achieved success in his cultivation, it was understandable that he wanted to settle the score with them. Yes. After I've settled my grudges, I'll come find you, Zhuowen said as he stood up, but just as he left the cliff, he found that Ma Yujie was following him closely. Why are you following me? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Ma Yujie grinned, of course I'm here to cheer you on. Back then, this group of people scolded me a lot, I want to see their miserable end. Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie with a faint smile. Brother Ma, you seem to be very sure that I can win. Ma Yujie shrugged, don't I know you well? You're not the kind of person who will throw away your life for nothing. Since you dare to go alone to settle the score with them, it's obvious that your strength has increased greatly and you're no longer afraid of them. Since you want to follow me, then follow me. Zhuowen nodded, but he didn't have any intention of driving Ma Yujie away. Although this fatty acted very cowardly every time, Zhuowen was very afraid of him because he couldn't see through this person's strength. This time, after his strength had increased greatly, he still felt a faint sense of threat from this fatty. It was as if no matter how much Zhuowen's strength increased, this fatty would always be a little stronger than him. It was as if this fatty had deliberately designed it. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's heart sank. It was very likely that this fatty was much stronger than him. It was just that every time he faced him, he hid most of his strength. If that was really the case, this fatty was really too terrifying. After leaving the extraterritorial battlefield, Zhuowen took out an ordinary divine warship. After Ma Yujie boarded, Zhuowen personally piloted the divine warship towards the other ghost domain. Chapter 4664. Translator, Trans and Editor, Trans and Deviant Ghost City. A month later, Zhuowen's divine ship arrived at Fire Ghost City. Fire Ghost City was the second largest city in the Deviant Ghost domain. It was the main trading city in the Deviant Ghost domain and had the largest port. It was a must-visit city for business cultivators. When Zhuowen first took the commercial divine ship to the Void Yama domain, he passed by this city. However, he was discovered before he could step into the city and was forced to escape into the depths of the dark ruins. As Zhuowen and Ma Yujie had disguised themselves, they entered Fire Ghost City without a hitch. Have you heard? The 3 deviant ghost kings have taken in a new adopted son. It is said that he is another monstrous genius. This time, The three deviant ghost kings are holding a conferring ceremony for this adopted son. It is said that they have invited all the heroes in the world to gather their luck for this adopted son. The three deviant ghost kings are really lucky. They have obtained another monstrous genius. Back then, the NTI Shiva was so stunning. Now, his name is known all over the world. If this new adopted son can reach Sakyamuni's achievements, the deviant ghost domain will leave the divine spark domain behind in the future. With the deviant ghost domain's current trend, it is indeed showing signs of becoming the #1 domain of the supreme domains. Of course, this will have to wait for Sakyamuni and the new adopted son to fully mature. As soon as Zhuoan and Ma Yujie entered Fire Ghost City, they immediately heard many people discussing the same matter. And this matter was that the three deviant ghost kings were holding a conferring ceremony for their new adopted son. The NTI Shiva is indeed not bad. If I'm not wrong, that fellow's Tao root is not ordinary. It seems like it can continuously evolve. Ma Yujie sighed and continued, if the three deviant ghost kings really find another genius who is not weaker than Sakyamuni, the deviant ghost domain will be incredible in the future. Zhuowen's expression was indifferent as he said, I think there won't be a second ancestral Tao root like Sakyamuni. Zhuowen had battled Sakyamuni several times, and he was well aware of how terrifying Sakyamuni's Tao root was. Such an ancestral Tao root could be considered to be one of a kind even in the chaotic starry sky. He didn't want the three variant ghost kings to be able to find another genius whose natural talent wasn't inferior to Sakyamuni. Ma Yujie nodded and said, You're right. Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root had the potential to become a prime Val god. There might not even be one in the entire starry chaos for countless years. Looks like the three deviant ghost kings will all be attending this conferring ceremony. This saves me the trouble of looking for them one by one, Zhuowen sneered. After asking around, Zhuowen found out that the conferring ceremony would be held in 2 months, and it would be held at the largest city in the Variant Ghost region, Variant Ghost City. Because most of the regions in the Variant Ghost region were covered in numerous restrictions that restricted flight, cultivators were unable to fly casually in the Variant Ghost region, and they could only travel between the various cities through some unique means of transportation in the Variant Ghost region. Needless to say, such rules were extremely wise indeed, and it prevented many cultivators with ill intentions from taking improper actions. After all, once cultivators caused trouble in the Variant Ghost region, they would be utterly unable to fly, and it would be extremely easy for them to be surrounded and captured by the experts of the Variant Ghost region. The Ghost Chariot was a unique means of transportation in the Variant Ghost region. The Ghost Chariot's appearance was extremely large and square, and it was capable of accommodating a few tens of people at a time. Every single Ghost Chariot had a corresponding ghost summon, and these ghost summons summoned the ghosts they'd raised to push the Ghost Chariot forward. Even though the Ghost Chariot's speed couldn't be considered to be fast, it was extremely stable. Moreover, the ticket price was extremely cheap, and it was a must-have choice for many ordinary cultivators in the Variant Ghost region. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie purchased tickets to head to Variant Ghost City. When they entered the Ghost Chariot, they found that it was filled with cultivators. The two of them found an empty seat in a remote corner and sat down as if nothing had happened. In front of the two of them, there were two people sitting opposite them, a man and a woman. The man was extremely handsome, while the woman was average-looking. The moment Zhuowen and Ma Yujie saw the female cultivator opposite them, they narrowed their eyes slightly. Their eyes were extremely sharp, and they could tell at a glance that this ordinary-looking female cultivator was definitely in disguise. This woman seemed to deliberately not want others to see her beautiful appearance, and had disguised herself as ugly. Perhaps she noticed that Zhuowen and Ma Yujie were both looking at her. The female cultivator lowered her head slightly, not daring to look at Zhuowen and Ma Yujie. The two of you, aren't you being too rude by staring at my Tao companion like this? The handsome male cultivator also noticed Zhuowen and Ma Yujie opposite him. He grabbed the slender waist of the female cultivator beside him and looked at Zhuowen and Ma Yujie with an unfriendly expression. Ma Yujie chuckled and said, Fellow Daoist, you've misunderstood. We just feel that your Tao companion looks too ordinary and is not compatible with you at all. Zhuowen did not say anything and only silently looked at the pair of Tao companions in front of him. He noticed that the moment the female cultivator was pulled into the man's embrace, there was a slight resistance, and her beautiful eyebrows were slightly furrowed. This detail only flashed by for a moment, and the female cultivator returned to normal. When the man heard Ma Yujie's words, he clearly enjoyed it. He raised his chin slightly and said, "You're right, but who told me to be so sentimental? I don't dislike my Dao companion." With that, the man pulled the female cultivator into his embrace and deliberately lowered his voice, swaying, "Don't you think so?" The female cultivator's delicate body trembled violently. She took a deep breath and nodded lightly. "The two of you are also going to Variant Ghost City?" Zhuowen suddenly asked with a smile. "That's right. We plan to go to Variant Ghost City for the conferment ceremony. You might not know, but the main character of the ceremony is my sworn brother." When the handsome young man said this, the corners of his mouth curled up, and his face was filled with pride. His words were not soft, and the entire ghost car could hear them clearly. The passengers in the ghost car could not help but look at the handsome young man. Their eyes were all different. Some were puzzled, some were shocked, some were suspicious, and so on. "Oh, so you're that powerful?" Ma Yujie raised his eyebrows and said meaningfully. "I know you don't believe me. However, when we reach Variant Ghost City, you'll know how laughable your suspicions are." The handsome young man sneered and sat in his original seat, not saying anything else. On the other hand, the female cultivator beside him trembled non-stop, as if she was afraid of something. Next, the ghost summoning envoy boarded the ghost car. After a series of wails and howls, countless ghosts appeared and began to push the ghost car forward. Along the way, the handsome young man spoke very little, and the female cultivator lowered her head and did not say a word. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie closed their eyes and rested silently. After more than a month of non-stop galloping, the ghost car finally arrived at Variant Ghost City. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie walked out of the ghost car and looked at the huge city in front of them. The corners of their mouths revealed a meaningful sneer. "Let's go. You stinking woman, why aren't you leaving? Do you believe that I won't kill you?" Suddenly, the conversation between the man and woman on the ghost car attracted the attention of Zhuowen and Ma Yujie. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 4665. The next day. Sure enough, Xiao Zong had set up a stage inside the residence and invited Miss Chu inside to watch the opera. The man hugged the beauty as he sat at the head of the table. The servants below all lowered their heads, not daring to breathe loudly. "Qing Wn, this grape is very sweet. You should also try one." Out of the corner of his eye, Xiao Zonghan caught a glimpse of a sleeve outside the door. The corners of his mouth hooked wickedly, but the words he spoke were incomparably gentle. Shun Xian's footsteps paused as her eyes fell on the man's handsome face. A sour feeling suddenly rose from the bottom of her heart. In the 7 years they had been married, he had never treated her so gently. As if sensing her gaze, the man lifted his eyes without the slightest trace of gentleness. "This commander and Qing Wan have already waited for a long time. Why did you only come out now? Do you feel wronged by singing for this commander?" His eyes were full of ridicule. Shun Xian's face was pale. "No." Forcefully suppressing the bitterness in her heart, she flung her long sleeves and her voice rose in spirals. Following her voice, Xiao Zonghan's expression became increasingly unsightly and the hand holding Chu Qingwan's waist also tightened. "Young commander." Chu Qingwan lifted her eyes to look at him. However, he seemed to have heard nothing. His eyes narrowed as he coldly stared at the thin figure below. "I didn't expect that Governor Shen's daughter would be so decent in her opera performance." Shun Xian's eyelashes trembled. No matter what it was, as long as he said it, she would do it. But it was precisely this kind of obedience, this kind of resignation that caused Xiao Zonghan's heart to abruptly rise with a monstrous fury. "Someone come. Young commander. Go, bring over 1,000 coins. Yes." The servant hastily accepted the order and left. The remaining servants were even more terrified. Only Chu Qingwan looked at Xiao Zonghan with a pensive gaze. Soon, the man came up with a large tray. On the tray, there was a lot of steel. Xiao Zhonghan looked at the coins and suddenly released Chu Qingwan's arm to take the tray. Young commander. A voice sounded and Xiao Zhonghan's gaze turned over. Chu Qingwan's voice was probing. You truly hate her. Xiao Zhonghan's cold eyes narrowed. Naturally. If she dies, what will happen to the young commander? Chu Qingwan asked almost instinctively. Xiao Zhonghan's eyes flashed as he shot a glance at the woman who was still singing. His voice abruptly turned ice cold. If she dies, this marshal will drape himself in red decorations and hold a banquet to celebrate. As soon as he finished speaking, he moved his hand, and the room was filled with the sound of pendants bouncing about. Shen Xiyin, you sang very well today. This 1,000 yuan is my reward to you. Then he turned around and left. Behind him, Shen Xiyin's footsteps were disturbed by the rolling pieces of steel. She fell heavily to the ground, but she didn't even cry out in pain. She just kept her head lowered, and the tears and despair in her eyes could no longer be hidden. After a long while, Madam, the young commander has already left, Chu Qingwan said. Shen Xiyin didn't raise her head. She just nodded her head and propped herself up. She turned around and walked straight with what little self-respect she had left. However, she had only taken 2 steps when a voice filled with pity and compassion called out to her from behind. Madam. She paused. Good and evil will eventually be repaid. Actually, Madam doesn't need to feel sorry for yourself. When you schemed against the young commander and your own sister in the past, you should have long thought of today's situation. Swish. The color of blood instantly receded from Shen Xiyin's face. Chapter 4666. This is a grand array at the early 4th heaven of the eternal realm. How could it be broken so easily? Xu Juanzhe's pupils shrank slightly, revealing a look of disbelief. He stared at Zhuowen, who was walking slowly into the mansion. He saw with his own eyes that the harmless-looking young man in front of him had shattered the grand formation around his residence with just a single step. Even a divine array master at the 4th heaven of the eternal realm couldn't do this. How dare you? At the gate of the mansion, many servants jumped up and launched a thunderous attack at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression was calm as he lightly punched out with his right palm. Surging divine energy gushed out, and a series of miserable shrieks rang out as the servants were sent flying. Xu Juanzhe, I'll give you a chance. Take us to the ceremony site during the conferring ceremony. Zhuowen looked indifferently at Xu Juanzhe in front of him and said in a flat tone. Xu Juanzhe's pupils shrank slightly. What do you want to do? Kill the 3 kings of deviant ghost. Zhuowen said lightly. What? Are you kidding? Xu Juanzhe was startled at first, but then he sneered. The 3 kings of deviant ghost were the most powerful existences in the deviant ghost realm. They were the top masters of the 9 major realms. This person was too arrogant to say that he wanted to kill the 3 kings of deviant ghosts. Bang! As soon as Xu Juanzhe finished speaking, a palm fell on his chest. Puff! Xu Juanzhe spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward, crashing into the pavilions behind him. Lord Xu. In the mansion, many servants were shocked, but they didn't dare to help Xu Juanzhe. Because Zhuowen's terrifying aura had completely locked on everyone present, so they didn't dare to move at all. Who are you? Xu Juanzhe's eyes were filled with fear. He struggled to stand up and stared at Zhuowen. He was at the peak of the inverse ancient starlight realm, but he couldn't see Zhuowen's attack at all. He knew that the reason for this was that the gap between him and Xu Juanzhe was too big. Zhuowen. Zhuowen said calmly. What? Are you Zhuowen? The moment he heard Zhuowen's name, Xu Juanzhe turned pale with fright. He knelt on the ground, trembling. How could he not have heard of Zhuowen's name? In the alien battlefield, Zhuowen had killed so many lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts. Even the ruler of the Bloodthorn domain, the bloodthirsty king, was killed by this kid. This showed how strong this kid was. It could be said that this kid was an expert on the same level as the 3 variant ghost kings, so how could he possibly go against him? Xu Juanzhe, my patience is limited. I'll count to 3. If you don't cooperate with me, you'll die immediately. Zhuowen clasped his hands behind his back and looked down at Xu Juanzhe, who was kneeling in the ruins in front of him. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Shu Juanzi could feel the intense killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes and his body trembled. He immediately bowed and said, "I'm willing to cooperate." Now, he had no other choice. If he didn't cooperate, he would definitely die. "Make a heavenly oath," Zhuowen said indifferently. Shu Juanzi sighed in his heart. He could only follow Zhuowen's instructions and make a heavenly oath. "Next, we'll stay here until the conferring ceremony begins. As for the people in your mansion, you can do as you deem fit." Zhuowen and Ma Yujie stepped into the mansion. Zhuowen's indifferent eyes swept across the kneeling servants and said calmly. Shu Juanzi quickly bowed and said, "Sir, don't worry. No one will spread this matter." Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded and calmly entered the depths of the mansion with Ma Yujie. After Zhuowen and Ma Yujie left, Shu Juanzi raised his head and looked coldly at the surrounding servants. "Today, you didn't see or hear anything. If anyone speaks of today's matter, I'll kill all 9 generations of his family," Shu Juanzi said indifferently. "We wouldn't dare." Many servants bowed their heads and said that they wouldn't dare. "You'd better not." After Shu Juanzi finished speaking, he suddenly waved his sleeve, and a terrifying divine power surged out, like countless hidden weapons explosively shooting out. These bowed servants didn't expect Shu Juanzi to suddenly attack. They were all hit and beheaded. After killing all of the servants, Shu Juanzi called for the other servants and cleaned up the corpses of the servants. Time flew by. Today was the conferring ceremony of Alien Ghost City. The entire Alien Ghost City was bustling with noise and excitement. It was very festive. The conferring ceremony could be said to be an unprecedented grand event in the alternate ghost realm. Outside Shu Juanzi's mansion, a magnificent carriage had already been prepared and stopped outside the red lacquered gate. After Shu Juanzi walked out of the mansion, he respectfully led the way for the 2 people behind him. One of them was a black-clothed youth, while the other was a plump fatty. These 2 people were naturally Zhuowen and Ma Yujie. After the 2 entered the carriage, Shu Juanzi was the last to enter. The space in the carriage was large enough to accommodate more than 10 people. The 4 walls of the carriage were inlaid with gorgeous and dazzling treasures. "My lords, there will be many experts from the alien ghost realm present at the conferring ceremony. Are you really going to make a move at the ceremony?" In the carriage, Shu Juanzi looked at the 2 people in front of him and asked with a nervous expression. "Of course. You just have to go through with the conferring ceremony. Don't worry about us," Zhuowen said indifferently. Shu Juanzi quickly nodded, but his heart was full of worry. As the adopted son of the 3 kings of Alien Ghost, he was the well-deserved protagonist of this conferring ceremony. Now, he had brought the sworn enemy of the 3 kings of Alien Ghost. If his adoptive father knew about this, he was afraid that they would not let him off easily. Sigh. "Now, I can only take one step at a time," Shu Juanzi sighed softly and murmured to himself. In the central area of Alien Ghost City, there was a vast square. In the center of the square stood a bluestone platform. At this moment, there was a sea of people around the platform. It was very lively. Today was the conferring ceremony, so it naturally attracted many experts from the alien ghost realm to come and watch. In front of the bluestone platform, there were 3 magnificent main seats. At this moment, 3 stalwart figures were sitting on these 3 main seats. Countless cultivators around the high platform looked at the 3 figures with awe and respect in their eyes. Because these 3 figures were none other than the true rulers of the alien ghost realm, the 3 kings of Alien Ghost. "Haha, big brother, congratulations to you. You actually found another good seedling." The Ice Ghost King sat on the far right. He cupped his hands and congratulated the Ice Demon King sitting in the middle. The Divine Ghost King also hurriedly said, "Third brother is right. Big brother is very lucky. Not only did you take in a peerless genius like Sakyamuni, but now you have a monstrous genius like Shu Juanzi." The Ice Demon King's mouth curled up slightly, but he said modestly, "You 2 brothers are too kind. Shu Juanzi's talent is indeed not bad, but there is still a gap between him and Sakyamuni. An ancestral Tao root like his was truly hard to come by in countless years. This is not my personal fortune, but the fortune of our entire alien ghost realm. Hearing this, the Ice Ghost King and the Divine Ghost King nodded repeatedly. It's here, it's here. Shu Juanza's carriage is here. Suddenly, a commotion came from below the high platform. The three kings of Alien Ghost could not help but look over. They found that the crowd in front of them had all opened up a path. A huge carriage slowly drove over towards the high platform. Chapter 46-67. The carriage passed through the crowd and finally stopped in front of the high platform in the middle of the square. The three ghost kings looked at the carriage and nodded to themselves. Shu Juanza was the genius that all three of them thought highly of. Although there was a gap between him and Sakyamuni, he would be able to become a giant in the future and support the entire alternate ghost realm. The bead curtain in front of the carriage gradually opened, and a tall figure walked out. In an instant, this figure attracted the attention of countless people around. Many people even came forward to catch a glimpse of Shu Juanza. Ice Demon King, Divine Ghost King, long time no see. The moment this figure walked out of the carriage, he slowly spoke with a bone-chilling tone. The three ghost kings, who were originally smiling, froze the moment they saw this figure. Zhuowen, why are you here? The Ice Demon King and the Ghost Child opened their eyes wide and looked at the young man who suddenly appeared outside the carriage in disbelief. Not only were the three ghost kings stunned, but all the cultivators in the square were also stunned. They never thought that an unfamiliar young man would come out of the carriage that was supposed to be Shu Juanza's. The Ice Demon King's voice was not soft, and everyone in the square heard it clearly. They finally knew the identity of this unfamiliar young man. Zhuowen. Could it be that Zhuowen who killed many people in the extraterritorial battlefield? It's very likely. This Zhuowen is truly as bold as an ox. He actually dared to come to the alternate ghost domain alone. Could it be that he's courting death? The square was in an uproar. Everyone was talking and looking strangely at the young man in front of the carriage. They had heard of many of Zhuowen's glorious deeds. They knew that this person had killed many lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts. Even the bloodthirsty king of the Bloodthorn realm had died in his hands. However, this was the core of the alternate ghost realm, the alternate ghost city, the home of the three ghost kings. It had a unique geographical advantage. This Zhuowen actually came here alone. If that wasn't courting death, then what was? Zhuowen. Where is Shu Juanza? The Ice Demon King's face was cold, and killing intent flowed in his eyes as he asked Zhuowen coldly. Don't worry, Shu Juanza will not die. The ones who will die will be the three of you, Zhuowen said calmly. You three little bastards, do you still recognize me? Today, Lord Fatty is here to see how you will die. Another fat figure came out of the carriage. His small eyes, which were squeezed together by his fat, looked wretchedly at the three kings. The faces of the three kings darkened. Of course, they knew this fatty. Back in the ruins of the foreign battlefield, they had been played around by this fatty. If they weren't in a hurry to kill Zhuowen and seize the domain origin fragment, how could they have let this fatty escape so easily? Godfather, I'm sorry, I had no choice. Inside the carriage, Shu Juanza trembled as he walked out. He lowered his head, not daring to look at the three variant ghost kings. The Ice Fiend King's expression was calm. He looked at Zhuowen and said, let Shu Juanza go, and I can leave both of your corpses intact. Zhuowen joked, Ice Fiend King, are you so sure that you can kill us? The Ice Fiend King sneered, Zhuowen, I admit that you are very strong. If we were outside, the three of us would not be able to do anything to you, but in the alternate ghost domain, you will die without a doubt. Zhuowen shook his head and laughed. He suddenly waved his sleeve, and a surge of divine power swept out and entered Shu Juanza's body. Shu Juanza let out a shrill scream, and his entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Even his divine soul was crushed. He couldn't be more dead. You can't kill me. And today, I'm here to kill all of you. Zhuowen said calmly. The Ice Fiend King, the Ice Ghost King, and the Divine Ghost King were stunned at first, and then they were completely enraged. Zhuowen, you are really courting death. The Ice Fiend King's eyes were red. He waved his sleeve, and suddenly, countless talismans appeared in the square. They swept out and formed a circle of boundary. I want you to die with Shu Juanzi. The Ice Fiend King formed a seal with both hands, and suddenly, the talismans formed an extremely terrifying killing array. Within the killing formation, the 100 Ghosts Parade whistled through the air, bringing with them an intense killing intent. They instantly entangled Zhuo Wen and Ma Yujie. It's the alternate ghost ultimate killing array. This is the top killing array of the alternate ghost clan. It is said that it has reached the peak of the 4th sky of the Eternal Realm, and is not far from the 5th sky of the Eternal Realm. Zhuowen is dead for sure. With this array and the 3 alternate ghost kings working together, he will die even if he doesn't die. The instant the killing array was activated, everyone around the square retreated one after another, their gazes aghast as they watched this scene. No one thought that Zhuowen could withstand this wave of attack. At the same time, the Ice Fiend King, the Ice Ghost King, and the Divine Ghost King all rushed out and attacked Zhuowen from 3 directions. They wanted to kill him with one blow. Insignificant skill. Zhuo Wen's expression was calm as he took a light step forward. Crack, crack, crack. A series of muffled sounds rang out, and then the huge killing array collapsed with a loud bang. The countless ghosts lingering around all collapsed and disappeared. What? The killing array is broken? Everyone in the square was dumbfounded and looked at the scene in disbelief. This was a killing array at the peak of the 4th sky of the Eternal Realm. Only a divine array master at the 5th sky of the Eternal Realm could break it so easily. After the killing array disappeared, everyone could see the battle on the high platform clearly. The 3 variant Ghost Kings spread out from 3 different directions, closing in on Zhuo Wen. The first to arrive was the Ice Fiend King. His law phenomenon was more than 1,000,000 feet tall, and he was covered in ice armor. He held a huge ice crystal halberd in his hand and rushed forward. With the halberd in his hand, he stabbed at Zhuowen's glabella. A terrifying wind swept out, causing the surrounding space to collapse and shatter. Zhuowen suddenly looked up, and his aura erupted like a terrifying eruption of a volcano. His body grew 10 feet tall, and in an instant, he was 9,000,000 feet tall. His size was far beyond the law phenomenon of the 3 alternate Ghost Kings. Rip! Zhuowen's right palm slammed out and landed on the ice crystal halberd. Then, the Ice Fiend King was horrified to find that his ice crystal halberd was crumbling inch by inch, and a terrifying force swept over. He spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. He landed on the ground far away, creating a huge crater. The moment the Ice Fiend King was repelled, the Divine Ghost King and the Ice Fiend King attacked from the left and right. The 2 of them wielded their natal divine weapons and mercilessly stabbed at Zhuo Wen's temples. If Zhuo Wen's head was pierced by the 2 of them, his lawful embodiment of heaven and earth would definitely explode. Zhuo Wen's expression was calm. He spread his hands to both sides and grabbed the 2 life-bound divine artifacts. Crack! With a gentle twist, his natal divine artifact shattered. What? Not only did you break through the law phenomenon, but you're also at the peak of the law phenomenon. And why is your law phenomenon so huge? The Ice Fiend King looked at this scene in disbelief and couldn't help but cry out in shock. Zhuowen didn't answer him directly. He opened his hands and pressed them on the Ice Fiend King and the Divine Ghost King's chests. This press seemed simple, but it contained an unprecedented amount of power. The Ice Fiend King and the Divine Ghost King's chests caved in. In the end, Zhuowen's palm pierced through. Bang! Then, the 2 of them flew backward. Their massive law phenomenon kept exploding, shrinking 10 feet by 10 feet, and finally collapsed into nothingness. Even their souls weren't spared. They completely died just like that. In an instant, the whole place was silent. Chapter 4668. Everyone on the square stared blankly at the scene. Everyone did not expect that the deviant ghost 3 kings joining hands was actually so easily broken by Zhuo Wen. Zhuowen had only used 2 moves to severely injure the Ice Demon King and kill the God Ghost King and the Ice Ghost King. What kind of power was this? Ice Demon King, I'll kill you. The moment Zhuo Wen killed the God Ghost King and the Ice Wraith King, he took a step forward and shot towards the Ice Wraith King. His lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was too powerful. The Ice Demon King's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was as small as a child in front of it. Run! The Ice Fiend King decisively fled into the distance. He was very clearly aware that Zhuo Wen was too strong at this moment, and he was utterly not a match for him. If he didn't leave now, he would definitely die. You can't escape. Zhuo Wen pinched the void with his right hand. Suddenly, countless formation runes appeared within 100 million miles, completely blocking the Ice Demon King's escape route. After his formation skills reached the 5th sky of the Eternal Realm, he could easily set up a formation at the 4th sky of the Eternal Realm. Bang! The Ice Demon King crashed into the formation runes. He grunted and flew backward. The moment he was sent flying, Zhuo Wen took a step forward and slapped out with his right palm, carrying a shocking aura. No! The Ice Fiend King roared. He pushed his palms forward, and all his god power poured out like a tsunami. Crack! The two sides collided, and the crisp sound of bones cracking was heard. The Ice Demon King's palms couldn't withstand Zhuo Wen's terrifying power. They twisted and broke. Zhuo Wen's palm was like a hot knife through butter. After crushing the Ice Demon King's palms, it slammed into the Ice Demon King's chest. Boom! The Ice Fiend King's chest instantly caved in. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Zhuo Wen. Crash! Zhuo Wen pressed down again, and the Ice Fiend King screamed in pain. He fell from the sky in a sorry state, creating a huge crater in the ground. Zhuo Wen landed lightly on the ground and walked to the edge of the deep pit. He looked down at the twitching Ice Fiend King who was on the verge of death and said, "This is the cycle of karma. What goes around comes around. Ice Demon King, you didn't expect this day to come, did you?" The Ice Demon King raised his head and looked at Zhuo Wen in fear. He didn't expect Zhuo Wen to become so powerful in just 100 years. Other ghost clans, listen to my order. Kill him at all cost. The Ice Fiend King suddenly screamed. He took out a pitch-black flute from his bosom and threw it out. Suddenly, countless black fog spread out from the flute. Countless ghosts and monsters were hidden within the black fog, and they charged at Zhuo Wen. Kill! 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 At the same time, many experts of the deviant ghost clan pounced forward, charging towards Zhuo Wen fearlessly. Child's play. Zhuo Wen waved his right hand lightly, and the countless ghosts that rushed out of the flute were all refined into energy, which flowed into his limbs and bones. He slapped with his left hand, and the 100 or so ghost clans practitioners at the front were all turned into dust. Just like that, Zhuo Wen took one step after another. Every step he took could kill hundreds of people. He took more than 10 steps in a row, and nearly 10,000 people had died at his hands. Many of the ghost clans were scared out of their wits. They looked at Zhuo Wen with fear. Zhuo Wen was too strong. No matter how many people came, they couldn't withstand a single slap from him. Zhuo Wen, kill me if you want, but please let my clansmen go. The Ice Demon King looked at the scene in front of him with an ashen face. He knew that even if all the ghost clans attacked together, they wouldn't be able to take down Zhuo Wen. Therefore, he immediately changed his strategy and planned to ask Zhuo Wen to let his clansmen go. Let your clansmen go? Zhuo Wen sneered and continued, then have you ever let the Pangu clan go? What? You're from the Pangu clan? The Ice Demon King's face turned pale. He looked at Zhuo Wen in disbelief. How could he not know about the Pangu clan? Back then, the other ghost clan was able to become a transcendent realm because they destroyed the Pangu clan and devoured the territory and resources of the Pangu realm. That was how they finally succeeded in becoming a transcendent realm. I'm not from the Pangu clan, but I once received the inheritance of a senior from the Pangu clan, so I owe him a favor. When I have the ability, I will avenge the Pangu clan. Zhuo Wen walked over slowly and stepped on the Ice Demon King's chest. He continued, now, repent in front of the countless souls of the Pangu clan. The Ice Demon King laughed, and it was a crazy laugh. Ha ha ha. Zhuo Wen, you're dreaming. The 100 Outer Territories is a cruel world. I'm strong, so I can plunder and kill as I wish. The Pangu clan is only weak in my eyes, so they deserve to be replaced by the ghost clans. The Ice Demon King roared crazily. Zhuo Wen's expression was cold. He silently looked down at the Ice Demon King under his feet. Suddenly, he lifted his foot and stomped down heavily. Since you won't apologize, I'll wipe out the entire ghost clan. Zhuowen's expression was calm. He waved his sleeve, and a formation disc flew out and enveloped the entire ghost city. No! Don't kill me. Save me. The instant the huge killing array was laid out, Deviant Ghost City turned into a miserable purgatory. All the creatures in different Ghost City were under the threat of the power of the killing array. Any weak cultivator basically died in the blink of an eye in the killing array. The stronger cultivators were also struggling to resist the attacks of the killing formation. They could die in the formation at any time. Zhuowen, you're despicable. The Ice Demon King said with an ugly expression. I'm despicable? Zhuowen laughed and said coldly, why didn't you say you were despicable when you wiped out the Pangu clan? I'm only here to collect the debt on behalf of the Pangu clan. I want you to apologize for your mistakes, and I'm despicable. Ice Demon King, you're really hopeless. Now, let me ask you, are you going to apologize or not? If you don't, your entire ghost clan can go to hell and apologize to the Pangu clan's heroic spirit. The Ice Demon King clenched his fists tightly. He roared at the sky and knelt in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen, I'm sorry. I was wrong, please spare my clansmen. Zhuowen looked on coldly and said, I'm not asking you to apologize to me. I'm asking you to apologize to the Pangu clan's heroic spirits who died. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have wiped out the Pangu clan. I was really wrong. The Ice Demon King lowered his head and roared. Since you know you were wrong, kill yourself now. Zhuowen said indifferently. The Ice Demon King raised his head and stared at Zhuowen. If I kill myself, will you spare my clansmen? I won't kill them. Zhuowen said indifferently. All right. The Ice Demon King nodded heavily. Chapter 4669. Dr. G. A smile hung on Chu Qingwan's face, and even her ears were flushed. Shen Xiyin watched in a daze. It seemed that many years ago, when she looked at Xiao Zhonghan, she often revealed this expression. Miss Chu should like this Dr. G, right? Shen Xiyin looked at Dr. G. His figure was tall and straight, and when she looked at him, he also coincidentally extended his hand. Hello, I'm Ji Mo. It was inevitable that people who returned from studying abroad would have some Western habits. Shen Xiyin was happy for Chu Qingwan. This kind of person was indeed worthy of entrusting her life to. While her thoughts were in a mess, Chu Qingwan had already told Ji Mo of Shen Xiyin's plans. After Ji Mo heard this, his expression became somewhat serious. He turned to look at Shen Xiyin. Have you really thought it through? If you insist on keeping the child, the chances of the child surviving are not high, and you definitely won't be able to keep your life. If you abort the child now, you still have a sliver of a chance to live. Yen, what are the chances of the child surviving? Shen Xiyin's expression was earnest. Almost zero. Zero. Shen Xiyin's face rapidly paled. The air seemed to freeze, and no one spoke. After a long time, she took a deep breath. When she raised her eyes to look at Ji Mo again, her eyes were filled with determination. Thank you for your trouble. Ji Mo's expression was complicated. This woman was willing to give up hope for a nearly zero chance of survival. Should he call her foolish, or noble? His lips moved, but in the end, he swallowed his words of persuasion. Okay, then I'll prescribe some medicine. Take it with you and take it on time. If there are any problems, you must contact me. Okay, thank you. After returning from the hospital, Shen Xiyin carefully hid the medicine Ji Mo prescribed for her. She looked at her relatively flat stomach, and the corners of her mouth revealed a trace of a smile. Since that day, in a place where Xiao Zhonghan couldn't see, Shen Xiyin and Chu Qingwan's relationship became closer and closer. Sometimes, Chu Qingwan would take her to the hospital for checkups, and sometimes, they would eat together. Shen Xiyin had a stomach problem, so she couldn't touch spicy or stimulating things. Chu Qingwan actually personally cooked some moderately hard porridge for her, striving to ensure that the child in her stomach was nutritious. Today's yam porridge. It's still hot, eat it later. Chu Qingwan placed the porridge in front of Shen Xiyin. She was wearing an apron, and with her charming face, she looked out of place. Shen Xiyin, on the other hand, only wanted to cry. In her entire life, this was the first time she had been treated so carefully by someone. This was the first time she had felt such warmth. She was at a loss and didn't know what she could do to repay him. Chu Qingwan took off her apron. "It's about time. Drink it quickly. I can't let my son starve." "You." Shen Xiyin was shocked. "You want to adopt him? You're not willing?" Chu Qingwan raised her eyebrows. "Or do you think my status isn't high enough?" "Of course not," Shen Xiyin said subconsciously, "but you're an unmarried woman. How can you raise a child? You'll attract a lot of criticism." "Phut, I'm a woman. Do you think I don't attract enough criticism?" Chu Qingwan flipped her hair nonchalantly. "They're jealous of my beauty." "Oh." Shen Xiyin held back her laughter and nodded. After taking 2 mouthfuls of porridge, he suddenly raised his head. "How do you know it's a son? What if it's a daughter? It's all the same." Chu Qingwan sat across from her and stared straight at her. Shen Xiyin felt uncomfortable under her stare. She looked at her clothes and wiped the corners of her mouth. "What's wrong? Was there something wrong?" "Nothing. Eat." "Okay." Shen Xiyin drank the porridge. Suddenly, the spoon in her hand moved, and a soft poached egg floated up from below. Her heart skipped a beat, and she looked at Chu Qingwan. "Happy birthday." Chu Qingwan smiled and raised her hand under the table. A small cake appeared in front of her. "I made this myself. I asked Ji Mo. He said you can eat it." Shen Xiyin's hand that was holding the spoon trembled slightly. Her nose felt sour. For a moment, she didn't know whether she should cry or laugh. "Wait, I'll light a candle," Chu Qingwan said as she went to get a candle. Shen Xiyin took the opportunity to wipe away the tears in her eyes. Chu Qingwan inserted the candle and lit it. The small candle flame reflected Shen Xiyin's thin and pale face. That day, Shen Xiyin had a very happy time. Although she came from a good family, she had never had a playmate of the same age. Although Shen Xingyue was her half-sister, her mother died because of Shen Xingyue's mother, and she was very distant from her. Although her father loved her, he didn't have time to accompany her. Chapter 4670. After arriving at Divine Spark City, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and summoned a white jade cauldron. Above the white jade cauldron, a beautiful woman in white slowly emerged. It was the cauldron's artifact spirit, Xian Ya. "Xian Ya, I've arrived at Divine Spark City. Now tell me about Qing Qixuo's background and where he is." Zhuowen looked at Xian Ya and asked. Back then, he had promised Xian Ya that once he was strong enough, he would avenge her master. Now that he had come to Divine Spark City, he naturally didn't intend to let Qing Qixuo go. It could be considered as him repaying Jing Hongwen's unfulfilled wish. Xian Ya looked at Zhuowen with a complicated expression and felt ashamed. Back then, she had promised Zhuowen that she would help the latter step into the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Later on, she discovered that Zhuowen did not need to rely on her strength to successfully reach the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Moreover, he was at the peak of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. That Qing Qixuo's background is extraordinary. He's an expert from one of the 2 great families of Divine Spark City, the Qingming family. My master's family was far inferior to the Qingming family and was plotted against by Qing Qixuo. I hope young noble Zhuo can avenge my master. Xian Ya bowed deeply to Zhuowen, her tone sincere. "Don't worry. Part of the reason I'm here is to repay Jing Hongwen's favor. Tell me about the Qingming family in detail," Zhuowen said to Xian Ya as he walked into the city. Divine Spark City was even grander than Variant Ghost City. It was made up of 33 giant cities. At first glance, it looked as if there were many hidden beasts, exuding a terrifying aura. With Xian Ya's explanation, Zhuowen gradually understood the cause and effect of the matter and also the location of the Qingming family. It was said that the Qingming family's ancestor and the Divine Spark clan's golden sovereign law king were sworn brothers and had a very good relationship. Therefore, the Qingming family acted tyrannically in Divine Spark City without any restrictions, causing their people to become increasingly arrogant. When Qing Chishio domineeringly destroyed Jing Hongwen's family, the Divine Spark clan simply stood by and watched. Many powers in the city were angry at the Qingming family, but they didn't dare to offend them. They knew very well that the Qingming family had the backing of Jinzuan Shakyamuni. There was no way they could fight against him, and they could only accept it. Master, this is the Qingming family. When Zhuoan and Ma Yujie stopped in front of a huge and luxurious mansion, Xian Yue's voice resounded in Zhuoan's mind. Zhuoan raised his head to take a look and discovered that on the signboard at the entrance of the mansion, 2 large words were written: Destiny. Get lost. All of you, scram. Suddenly, from the back of the main street, a group of more than 10 cavalrymen majestically arrived. Their leader was a young female cultivator wearing a blue gauze skirt. The female cultivator was quite beautiful. Her skin was as white as snow, but there was a baleful aura between her brows, which destroyed her overall beauty. What surprised Zhuoan even more was that these cavalrymen were riding divine chariots at the level of Nigu Xingguang. The female cultivator's cultivation was only at the divine chariot level, but she could ride such a divine chariot. Her background was probably not simple. These divine chariots could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, but what made Zhuoan frown was that the female cultivator purposely rode the cavalrymen on the main street and rammed them into the cultivators who were strolling on the street. Many of the cultivators hastily dodged, but even more were knocked off their feet by the collision. Some were even killed by the collision. Ha ha ha. A bunch of trash. The female cultivator sneered and headed straight for the Qingming mansion. Zhuoan and Ma Yujie were standing outside the mansion. The female cultivator naturally saw them, but she had no intention of stopping. Instead, she sped up. Zhuoan frowned, thinking that this female cultivator was truly arrogant and insufferably arrogant. The 2 of them lightly stepped on the ground, dodging the female cultivator's rampage. Who told you to dodge? You're courting death. Seeing that Zhuoan and Ma Yujie had dodged, the female cultivator was flustered and exasperated. She took out a divine sword and shot it at Zhuoan and Ma Yujie. Zhuoan frowned. This female cultivator was really rude and unreasonable. They had only dodged subconsciously, but she attacked in anger. Bang! Just as Zhuoan was about to attack, Ma Yujie made the first move. He sent the divine sword flying with a single palm strike. Stupid woman. What's wrong with dodging? Am I in your way? Or am I in your way? Ma Yujie cursed and immediately charged at the young female cultivator. How dare you insult me? I'm going to pull out your tendons and peel off your bones. Attack. The female cultivator was so angry that her face turned cold. With a wave of her hand, more than 10 cavalrymen behind her rushed toward Ma Yujie. Unfortunately, these cavalrymen were no match for Ma Yujie. In less than 10 breaths, Ma Yujie had dealt with them cleanly. Bitch! You want to pull out my tendons and peel off my bones? See if I don't kill you. After Ma Yujie dealt with the cavalryman, his fat hand grabbed the female cultivator's hair and pulled her down, throwing her heavily to the ground. The female cultivator was dizzy from the fall and vomited blood wildly. Her face was pale beyond recognition. You! How dare you! How dare you! How dare you hurt me? Do you know who I am? I am. The female cultivator screamed. I don't care who you are. If you dare to provoke me, I'll kill you. Ma Yujie said domineeringly. He grabbed the female cultivator's hair and kept throwing her on the ground, creating many deep pits. I'm the first daughter of the Qingming family. My father is Qing Chishio. If you dare to be so presumptuous, my father will not let you off. The female cultivator screamed and said ruthlessly. So your father is Qing Chishio. Zhuoan spoke. Why? Are you afraid? Seeing Ma Yujie stop, the female cultivator could not help but say proudly. Why would I be afraid of you? I'll kill you all the same. Ma Yujie cursed and hit even harder. He threw the female cultivator until she was on the verge of death before letting go. Brother Zhua, do you want to kill him? Ma Yujie looked at Zhuoan and asked. Don't kill him first. Zhuoan said calmly. Ma Yujie nodded and threw the female cultivator in front of Zhuowen. Ask Qing Chishio to come out. Zhuowen looked down at the female cultivator and said indifferently, Why? Why are you looking for my father? At this moment, the female cultivator was much more obedient and asked weakly, Kill him. Zhuowen said indifferently. The female cultivator was slightly taken aback but immediately laughed out loud. Her smile was full of mockery. You want to kill my father? With just you? What a joke. The female cultivator sneered. But just as she finished speaking, Zhuowen stepped on her face, making her unable to say anything else. I asked you to call him out, not for you to grumble here. If you dare to say another word, I'll kill you. Zhuowen said murderously. The female cultivator trembled. She did feel the strong killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes and did not dare to say anything else. She hurriedly took out a communication jade talisman and sent a message to Qing Chishio. My father will be here soon. The female cultivator looked at Zhuowen in horror and said in a low voice. Sure enough, not long after the female cultivator finished speaking, a figure with a powerful aura rushed out of the Qingming family. Behind this figure, there was a large group of people following closely behind, their momentum vast and mighty. Chapter 4671. You didn't. Chu Qingwan frowned. Yes. No more dodging, no more dodging. This time, Shen Xiyin raised her head without showing any signs of weakness and met Chu Qingwan's gaze. This time, she was magnanimous as she said to Chu Qingwan word by word, in the past 10 years, Xiao Zhonghan has hated me, scolded me, and blamed me, but I have never schemed against him. I have never done anything to let him down. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. The corners of her mouth curved, her teary eyes filled with stubbornness. I have never done it. I only love him. Even if he hated me, blamed me, and wished for nothing more than for me to die, it has never wavered. Chu Qingwan was stunned. She had once pitied and sympathized with Shen Xiyin, the wife of the young commander, because of her illness, but she had never liked her. She didn't like her not because of her past viciousness and scheming. Rather, it was because of her cowardice. In front of Commander Xiao, she seemed to always be cowardly and timid. But at this moment, the cowardly and timid Shen Xiyin in her eyes had a smile on her lips and her back was straight. Xiao Zhonghan hates me and blames me. I have no way to explain. Even if I did, he wouldn't believe me. I'm waiting. I thought that as long as I kept waiting, he would one day take the initiative to believe me. Her smile became brighter and more dazzling, but the bitterness at the corners of her mouth was deep. But I'm afraid I won't be able to wait. Her entire body was ice-cold without a trace of warmth. Her stomach cramped and pulled outwards. Fine beads of sweat seeped out from Shen Xiyin's pale cheeks. Her hands were tightly clenched, and the green veins under her skin were visible to the naked eye. Chu Qingwan's eyes were filled with a complicated expression. She thought Shen Xiyin was despicable, shameless, selfish, and cowardly. But the Shen Xiyin in front of her was stubbornly foolish, so stubborn that it made one's heart ache. Was this Shen Xiyin the Shen Xiyin she knew? Miss Chu, are you satisfied after hearing this? Do you believe it? Shen Xiyin gritted her teeth, her body trembling from the cramping pain, but she tried her best to endure and even forced out a smile. Chu Qingwan took a deep breath. She looked at Shen Xiyin. Instead of saying whether she believed it or not, she took out a piece of paper from her bag. What was this? Shen Xiyin didn't take it. Chu Qingwan stuffed the piece of paper into her hand. This is my sister's attending doctor. He came back from the West. His medical skills are good, and he's also a good person. Shen Xiyin lowered her head and looked at the contact information. Thank you. Go and take a look. Now, I'll go with you. A trace of self-mockery flashed across Shen Xiyin's eyes. Miss Chu doesn't believe me. Do you think that I'm lying to you about my illness? She clenched the piece of paper and straightened her back. Whether you believe it or not, what does that have to do with me? She turned around and left. But in the next moment, his body fell to the ground like a butterfly in the wind. In the hospital, everything was pure white. Shen Xiyin slowly opened her eyes. In the next moment, she saw Chu Qingwan standing beside her with an inexplicable expression. Is this A hospital. Shen Xiyin's voice was unusually dry and hoarse. Chu Qingwan poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. Thank you. Shen Xiyin took the water and took a sip. You're pregnant. This one sentence was earth-shattering. The cup in Shen Xiyin's hand fell on her body, and the water soaked the quilt on her body. Her voice trembled, but it hid her unconcealable ecstasy. What did you say? I'm pregnant. Yes, you're pregnant. The child is already more than 4 months old. It really was hard on her. She had been made difficult by Xiao Zhonghan time and time again, but nothing had happened. You didn't know? Chu Qingwan asked again. No, I didn't know. Shen Xiyin was still in ecstasy. Chu Qingwan looked at her expression and felt a bit upset. She said, you can't keep this child. No. Shen Xiyin's lips curled into a smile. She looked up at Chu Qingwan, her eyes sparkling. I want to keep him. Chapter 4672. The dignified young commander's residence was surrounded by people. When Xiao Zhonghan arrived with his men, he saw the elite soldiers he had personally trained raising their black muzzles and confronting Qin Hai's men. There was not a single sound in the confrontation between hundreds of people. It was as if, at this moment, as long as a single needle fell to the ground, the delicate balance would be violently broken. His expression did not change as he walked steadily, his military boots making a sonorous clacking sound under his feet. Qin Hai was still the same as he had been a few years ago. His hair was a little bald, his height was a little short, and his back was straight. When he saw Xiao Zhonghan, his shrewd and ruthless eyes narrowed, revealing a mouthful of slightly yellowed teeth. Oh, it's you. I haven't seen you for a few years, and you've also relied on your father-in-law's help to upgrade your bird gun to a cannon. You've become extraordinary. His words were sarcastic. Xiao Zhonghan was not affected in the slightest. He had earned all of this by relying on his own flesh and blood. Governor Qin didn't come here just to see me, right? He asked indifferently. Nonsense. Qin Hai spat and bluntly asked, where is that little slut, Shen Xingyue? My men saw her come to your place. Slut. Xiao Zhonghan's voice grew cold. Qin Hai spat again. Of course. If having an affair behind my back isn't a slut, then what is? Not killing her is this daddy's kindness. Scram. Xiao Zhonghan's voice resonated. If you don't scram, don't blame me for being impolite. Who are you, Anne? Before Qin Hai could finish speaking, an anxious female voice suddenly sounded from inside the young commander's residence. Qin Hai, don't make things difficult for Zhonghan. Xiao Zhonghan's brows furrowed. When he turned around, Shen Xingyue had already staggered over. She was wearing Shen Xiyin's clothes and her hair was also very different from yesterday's. From a distance, Xiao Zhonghan thought it was that woman, Shen Xiyin. Zhonghan, are you all right? Shen Xingyue's pale face relaxed when she saw Xiao Zhonghan. Little slut. Qin Hai was unable to restrain his anger. Seducing men in front of this daddy, it seems, Governor Qin. Xiao Zhonghan abruptly interrupted him. Look clearly. This is not your second wife. She is this Xiao's wife, Shen Xiyin. Qin Hai was stunned. He knew that Shen Xingyue and Shen Xiyin had the same father but different mothers. Their mothers were twin sisters, so the two of them looked very similar. He looked at the woman in front of him again, and for a moment, he was really unsure. His cold gaze scanned Shen Xiyin's body from top to bottom. Shen Xingyue's body trembled uncontrollably. Just as she was about to collapse, Xiao Zhonghan pulled out the gun at his waist. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The surroundings immediately became chaotic. Scram! The man's voice was steady and pleasant. Shen Xingyue's panic-stricken heart suddenly trembled. This was the man she wanted. Not that Qin Hai. The gun landed in front of his feet. Qin Hai's face alternated between red and white. He was unwilling to cower, but for some reason, when he saw Xiao Zhonghan's icy expression, his heart felt fear. After all, this was Xiao Zhonghan's territory. He spat on the ground and snorted, "Get out of here." In the end, he left behind a sentence, "Xiao Zhonghan, if that little slut doesn't come back on her own in 3 days, this daddy will definitely turn your city upside down. He turned around. Shen Xingyue's body finally could no longer support itself and softly collapsed. She was scared, terrified. That Qin Hai was simply a demon. She was only in her 20s. She didn't want to be with that disgusting demon. She threw herself into Xiao Zhonghan's arms. Her body trembled violently. She hugged him. This man was the one she should rely on. Shen Xiyin. That woman had taken so much from her. She had heard that Shen Xiyin had disappeared, so she had deliberately dressed as Shen Xiyin to appear here. She knew that Xiao Zhonghan would protect her. Yes, he would protect her. As for Shen Xiyin, hatred flashed through her eyes. Chapter 4673. Qingming Family. In the spacious hall, Zhuowen sat on the main seat with Ma Yujie beside him. Qing Lingyong, the old ancestor of the Qingming family, stood respectfully beside Zhuowen. His head was lowered and his eyes were filled with fear and resentment. Countless cultivators of the Qingming family were gathered outside the hall. They were all silent as they knelt on the ground with their heads lowered, not daring to look at Zhuowen. Qing Lingyong, you don't seem to be convinced by me. Zhuowen sat on the main seat and tapped the armrest with his right index finger. He glanced at Qing Lingyong and asked calmly, I don't dare. Qing Lingyong quickly knelt on the ground and begged for forgiveness. Do you think that I'm no match for the Golden Supreme Shakyamuni? Zhuowen asked calmly. Qing Lingyong trembled and shook his head. I don't dare. Sir, you've misunderstood. Zhuowen smiled without speaking, and he didn't ask any further questions. His sharp gaze passed through the door of the hall and shot directly towards the sky ahead. Seems like it's coming, Zhuowen said calmly. Ma Yujie's eyelids twitched. What a powerful aura. The Golden Supreme Shakyamuni is stronger than we thought. I'm afraid he's not far from the 10,000 techniques coalescence. Zhuowen smiled. As long as the Golden Supreme Shakyamuni doesn't reach the 10,000 techniques coalescence, he won't be a match for me. It won't be difficult for me to kill him. Ma Yujie nodded. His senses were much stronger than ordinary people. The moment he saw Zhuowen, he knew that Zhuowen was no longer the same as before. In the entire Supreme region, no one was a match for Zhuowen. Qing Lingyong was still kneeling on the ground with his head lowered. However, there was a trace of disapproval in his eyes. He was full of confidence in the Golden Supreme Shakyamuni. He didn't think that Zhuowen was a match for the Golden Supreme Shakyamuni. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, a blazing golden light came from afar. A terrifying aura that could shake the heavens and earth swept out, filling up the entire Qingming family. In an instant, everyone from the Qingming family raised their heads and looked at the golden light that was getting closer and closer. In less than 3 breaths, the golden light stopped right above the Qingming family. This is the Golden Supreme Shakyamuni. Countless people raised their heads and stared at the sky above the Qingming clan, only to see a gigantic golden palanquin floating quietly in the air. The Golden Supreme Shakyamuni was pulled on the Golden Supreme Shakyamuni. The Golden Supreme Shakyamuni. The Shakyamuni. At each of the 4 corners of the palanquin stood 4 slender and beautiful maids, each holding a yellow parasol. We Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni, 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 the Shakyamuni I. Within the hall of the Qingming clan, Qing Lingyong glanced at Zhuowen who was seated on the main seat. Her eyes flickered, she didn't know whether to stand up or kneel down. Zhuowen, do you know your crime? A clear and melodious voice faintly came from the palanquin. It was like a great bell that resounded throughout the entire city with a supreme prestige. Oh! Shakyamuni, why are you acting like a god in front of me? Crime? Then tell me, what crime have I committed? On the main seat, Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. He flicked his finger and the entire hall exploded with the sound of thunder. A giant sword made of divine power shot into the sky and pierced toward the Shakyamuni. Whoosh! The hall of the Qingming family exploded and turned into a pile of rubble. The giant sword pierced through the sky and pierced through the 4 Shakyamuni in front of the Shakyamuni. Rumble. With an earth-shattering explosion, the majestic Shakyamuni exploded into countless streaks of golden light. The maids at the four corners of the Shakyamuni fell to the ground. Inside the palanquin, a figure radiating golden light reached out with his right hand and easily caught the giant sword made of divine power in his palm. He was an extremely handsome man with long golden hair that reached his waist. He was Jinzuan Shakyamuni. Your cultivation has risen really quickly. You have reached the pinnacle of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Jinzuan Shakyamuni looked down at Zhuowen, who was still sitting on the main seat. His beautiful eyes revealed a trace of seriousness. Jinzuan Shakyamuni, I have no enmity with you. If you submit to me, I can spare your life. Zhuowen slowly stood up and looked straight at Jinzuan Shakyamuni, who was hovering in the air. Many cultivators of the Qingming family looked at Zhuowen in shock. They wondered if this person had lost his mind. Who was Jinzuan Shakyamuni? He was the strongest person in the Supreme Region. Zhuowen wanted him to submit to him the moment he arrived. Could it be that this person was so confident that he was stronger than Jinzuan Shakyamuni? Qing Lingyong's eyes revealed a gloating look. He knew that Jinzuan Shakyamuni would not let Zhuowen go after hearing his words. No enmity. Submit to you. Zhuowen, where did your confidence come from? What reason do you have? There are 4 Shakyamuni in the Divine Blaze domain. Aside from me, the other 3 Shakyamuni were all killed by you. You tell me that you have no enmity with me? Do you think I am stupid? Jinzuan Shakyamuni was so angry that he trembled as he questioned coldly. The other 3 Shakyamuni were not killed by me. They were killed by Sakyamuni. Do you believe me? Zhuowen said indifferently. Jinzuan Shakyamuni's expression was cold as a terrifying aura erupted from his body. He said, Zhuowen, no matter how glib your tongue is today, I will kill you. After he finished speaking, Jinzuan Shakyamuni took 7 steps in the void. His body grew 10 feet tall and he instantly turned into a 500-foot-tall giant. It had to be said that Jinzuan Shakyamuni was indeed much stronger than an ordinary law phenomenon. The law phenomenon that he had manifested was also extremely large. Then I would like to see how you are going to kill me. Zhuowen smiled coldly as the sword finger on his right hand pointed at his glabella. Suddenly, a blazing purple-gold spiritual power gushed out from his glabella and condensed in front of him, turning into a spiritual sword essence that was millions of feet tall. Ever since Zhuowen's spiritual power had reached the human law phenomenon, his spiritual sword essence had also undergone an unprecedented transformation. Its power was enough to kill any expert below the 10,000 techniques to 1 realm. Go. Zhuowen pointed his sword finger at the void and a huge spiritual sword essence broke through the void and shot towards Jinzuan Shakyamuni. This spiritual power, how can it be so strong? When Jinzuan Shakyamuni felt the terrifying aura of the spiritual sword essence, his heart pounded rapidly and his expression changed completely. Jinzuan Shakyamuni formed a seal with both hands and a powerful mystique shot out in an attempt to block off Zhuowen's sword. Bang bang bang! However, it was a pity that Jinzuan Shakyamuni's mystiques could not block off the spiritual sword essence and they all collapsed upon contact. Puke. In the end, the spiritual sword essence pierced through Jinzuan Shakyamuni's huge body before everyone's eyes. Then, Jinzuan Shakyamuni's law phenomenon collapsed inch by inch and turned into countless golden light spots. In an instant, the entire Qingming family and Divine Spark City fell into an unbelievable silence. Chapter 4674. Finally, after an unknown amount of time, Xiao Zhonghan withdrew. His clothes were still neat and tidy, but she was lying on the ground like a broken doll. The man's eyes fell on her body and flashed. Just as he was about to speak, a report suddenly came from outside. Young Commander, Second Miss Shun is here. Xingyue. Shun Xiyin's body, which was lying on the ground, suddenly trembled. She turned her head in disbelief. Xingyue, why did she come back? Xiao Zhonghan had originally turned to leave. He was impatient to see Shen Xingyue, but when he heard Shen Xiyin's words, he suddenly stopped. He sneered and looked back disdainfully at her. Yes, Xingyue is back. This commander will naturally make it up to her in the future. As for you, this commander will also make you pay the price for the things you did. Shun Xian's mouth tasted of blood and rust. She saw the ecstasy and impatience in the corners of Xiao Zhonghan's eyes and brows. Her heart, which had long been frozen, fiercely trembled a few times. On what basis? On what basis was he making demands of her 1 second and then leaving for another woman the next? On what basis was he unwilling to listen to her explanation and insisted on forcing those mistakes onto her? She was about to die, so why couldn't he stay for her? The figure in front of her had already left and the door slammed shut. Bang! The loud sound of the door slamming shut abruptly woke Shun Xian. She crawled up from the ground and rushed out in her thin clothes, not even bothering to put on her shoes. She had to keep him. Keep him. But before she could rush out, the door was pulled open with a whoosh. The man's figure stood coldly in front of her. Before she could finish speaking, he coldly interrupted her. You are not allowed to come out. If you dare to let Xingyue see you and dirty her eyes, this commander will definitely make you regret living. Shun Xian's body seemed to be nailed to the ground. He didn't come back for her. It was for Shun Xingyue. In order to not let Shun Xingyue see her, but she didn't owe Shun Xingyue anything. Shun Xingyue's mother and her mother were twin sisters. That year, when her mother was pregnant, Shun Xingyue's mother seized the opportunity to climb into her father's bed. That was how Shun Xingyue was born. Because of this, her mother fell ill from accumulated resentment and passed away after giving birth to her. Her father felt that he had let his first wife down and wanted to make it up to his eldest daughter. He was not close to Shun Xingyue either. But if they asked themselves honestly, they had never treated Shun Xingyue badly. If Shun Xingyue hadn't slept with Qin Hai 7 years ago, her father wouldn't have made the decision to marry Shun Xingyue to Qin Hai. But I'm your wife. Shun Xingyue has long been Qin Hai's concubine, she shouted, her voice full of determination. Xiao Zhonghan's entire body became even colder, and the gaze he used to look at Shun Xian also wished he could tear her to shreds. If it wasn't for you, Xingyue wouldn't have married Qin Hai. It was all because of this woman. If she hadn't poisoned Xingyue, Xingyue wouldn't have slept with Qin Hai and even become his third concubine. He knew very well what kind of person Qin Hai was. All these years, he had been constantly expanding his military strength, waiting for this day. He wanted to snatch Xingyue from the hands of that bastard Qin Hai. He also wanted Shun Xian, this vicious woman, to receive the punishment she deserved. Someone come! Xiao Zhonghan suddenly shouted, lock her up for this marshal. She absolutely cannot be allowed to appear in front of Xingyue. Yes, young marshal. Shun Xian panicked. She looked at Xiao Zhonghan, her face full of disbelief. She struggled, her legs already numb from the cold. Xiao Zhonghan, I am your wife. Did you forget that it's my birthday today? That scarf was really a gift from Miss Chu. If you don't believe me, you can investigate. I also didn't drug Xingyue. If you don't believe me, you can also investigate. Her words were spoken extremely quickly, but Xiao Zhonghan's expression did not change in the slightest. What did her birthday have to do with him? Whether she had done anything or not, he was naturally very clear about it. Those photos of her talking and laughing with a man, how could they be fake? The coldness in his eyes was like a raging sea, engulfing everything. Are they all dead? Lock her up for this marshal. Xiao Zhonghan, I didn't do it. Xiao Zhonghan, I regret it. I will never fall in love with you in my next life. Chapter 4675. In the depths of the chaotic cosmos where darkness and coldness coexisted. A streak of light tore through the darkness and instantly shot off into the distance. It was a huge divine ship. Zhuoan and Ma Yujie stood side by side on the deck as they looked at the countless fragments of continents and meteors that flew past them. Brother Ma, are you sure it's this way? Zhuoan could not help but frown as he looked at the endless darkness ahead. It had already been 49 days since he and Ma Yujie had left the Divine Blaze domain. However, it was as if they were walking in the same spot. Apart from the fragments of continents, they were surrounded by countless shattered meteors. Ma Yujie chuckled. Brother Zhuo, don't worry. I'm very familiar with the ruins of the overgod domain. I won't lead you the wrong way. Although Zhuoan had his doubts, he still chose to believe in Ma Yujie. Although the fatty was often unreliable, he was still quite reliable when it came to important matters. After flying for a few more days, Ma Yujie suddenly stopped the ship. What's wrong? Zhuoan looked at Ma Yujie, scratching his head as an ominous feeling rose in his heart. We seem to have gone in the wrong direction. I remember that it should be that way. No, it should be the other way. That's not right either. Ma Yujie smiled awkwardly. Zhuoan was speechless. After a few months, the two of them finally arrived at the ruins of the overgod world. Are these the ruins of the overgod domain? Zhuoan could not help but frown as he looked ahead. The ruins of the overgod domain that appeared before him was no longer a complete domain. Instead, they were fragments of continents that had been shattered into countless regions. However, the fragments seemed to be pulled by some kind of power as they constantly revolved around the center. That's... Zhuoan's gaze landed on the center of the ruins. A gigantic sphere hovered there. This sphere was emitting a scorching and dazzling light, which was many times brighter than the sun. The origin of the domain? Zhuoan stared at the huge glowing sphere and immediately sensed the vigorous and blazing origin source aura emanating from it. Moreover, she could feel that the origin energy within the ball was many times more powerful than the origin energy of the Abyss realm. This Master God realm has been destroyed for who knows how many years. Why is its realm source still preserved until now? Zhuoan asked in confusion. Ma Yujie smiled faintly and said, Brother Zhuo, there's something you don't know. You probably can't even begin to imagine how powerful the Master God realm is right now. In the past, there were several existences who could directly face the primordial gods. The strength of this realm is unprecedented in the entire primal chaos. Hearing this, Zhuoan was shocked. Facing the immemorial gods directly? What kind of great power did this require? In the entire 100 outer realms, the most powerful people were far inferior to the archaic gods, yet several of them had appeared in the Master God realm. This was just too shocking. Moreover, after countless years, 99% of this domain's origin has been lost. Ma Yujie spoke slowly. His words were earth-shattering, completely shocking Zhuoan's soul. The remnant origin that had lost 99% of its origin was still stronger than the Abyss realm source. Just how powerful was the complete Master God realm? Such a vigorous and high-level origin. Has no powerhouse discovered it after countless years? Zhuoan asked with a frown. Although the Master God realm was located in a very remote location and it would be difficult to discover it, after so many years, there must have been a peerless powerhouse who could find it. However, after countless years, the Master God realm's origin was still far away. How could Zhuoan not be shocked? Ma Yujie sneered and said, Do you think it's easy to obtain this origin? With that, Ma Yujie waved his right hand, and a huge stone that was hundreds of feet long was pulled by his power and flew through the air, smashing heavily into the ruins of the Master God realm. The moment the stone fell into the ruins, the ear-piercing sound of chains rang out, and then countless pitch-black figures rushed out, fighting to be the first to launch a fierce attack on the stone. In the blink of an eye, the huge stone was shattered into countless pieces. Zhuoan's pupils shrank into needles as he stared at the countless strange figures bound by chains in the ruins of the Master God realm. Although these strange figures were the same as humans, their skin was greenish-black, and their skin was covered with dense black scales. Their eyes were pitch-black, and their bodies exuded a strange demonic aura. This demonic aura was completely different from the demonic aura of Zhuoan's limitless demonic scripture. This demonic aura was completely filled with pure evil, hostility, brutality, and all kinds of shocking negative energy emotions. What are these things? Zhuoan said with a slight frown. They're demonic puppets. Ma Yujie said with a serious look. Demonic puppets? What's that? Zhuoan said with a little knowledge. This was the first time he had heard of these so-called demonic puppets. Ma Yujie said in a low voice, These demonic puppets should have entered the ruins of the Master God realm when they were alive to seize the origin. However, They were all contaminated by the demonic aura of the primordial demonic seed and turned into strange demonic puppet. Primordial demonic seed? Zhuowen frowned. He was getting more and more confused. This so-called primordial demonic seed was something he had never heard of before. I can't explain the primordial demonic seed to you in a short time. Let's find a way to enter the origin at the core of the ruins first. I'm 80% sure that the last primordial stone is in the origin world. Ma Yujie said with a serious look. The origin world was an independent space world. Cultivating or comprehending in it would bring endless benefits. Back then, Duan Jipeng, Zi Yang, and Luo Ya had cultivated in the origin world. In the end, Duan Jipeng successfully broke through to the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. This master god realm was extremely extraordinary. Even though 99% of the origin world had been lost, the world within it was probably not simple. If the last primordial stone was really in there, Zhuowen felt that it was normal. Brother Zhuo, I have an item that can temporarily suppress the demonic aura of the primordial demonic seed and prevent us from being contaminated by the demonic aura. However, if we want to enter the core of the ruins, we have to break through these demonic puppet. Ma Yujie looked at Zhuowen and continued, these demonic puppets are really powerful. The weakest is at the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, while the strongest is already at the 10,000 techniques return to one. You and I have to work together, otherwise, we won't be able to enter at all. Zhuowen glanced at Ma Yujie and did not object. Ma Yujie grinned and took out a huge imperial canopy. He took out the imperial canopy. Immediately, the imperial canopy spewed out endless blazing light and floated above Zhuowen and Ma Yujie's heads. Endless brilliance sprinkled down. The demonic aura not far away seemed to have met its natural enemy and gradually retreated, not daring to approach. Let's go. Ma Yujie glanced at Zhuowen and took the lead. Zhuowen was not willing to be left behind. The moment the two of them stepped into the ruins of the Master God realm side by side, the entire ruins resounded with the sound of countless chains. Demonic puppets flew wildly toward Zhuowen and Ma Yujie, instantly drowning the two of them. Chapter 4676. Shun Xiyin stood at the entrance of Paramount. She was dressed in luxurious and exquisite clothes, which did not match the coarse smell of powder here. As a result, when people passed by her, they subconsciously avoided her. She tightened her grip on the gift box bag. Finally, she stood in front of Chu Qingwan. The person who used to stand on the stage and wait for her to give her a gift was now standing in front of her. Madam, I like this gift very much. Please thank the young marshal for me. Thank him for his love. Chu Qingwan's expression was gentle and her smile was gentle, but there was a trace of sympathy and pity in her eyes when she looked at Shun Xiyin. Under her gaze, Shun Xiyin only wanted to escape. But, is there anything else? Chu Qingwan asked. The elegant smile on her face cracked inch by inch. Shun Xiyin's words were stuck in her throat. Embarrassment quickly climbed up from the bottom of her heart. Her voice was extremely soft. Miss Chu, can you teach me how to sing? Sing? Chu Qingwan was surprised. Yes. Shun Xiyin gritted her teeth. Zhonghan said that he wants to hear me sing, so I want to learn from you. Chu Qingwan was even more surprised. Her face was charming and moving, especially under the light. Her eyes moved and were full of charm. His eyes were filled with surprise, pity, sarcasm. Shun Xiyin's fingers trembled slightly. Her small face was pale, and her fingertips were cold. Even her body, which was wrapped in fur, quickly turned cold. All right, I'll teach you if you want to learn. What does Madam want to learn? The night was long. Shun Xiyin and Chu Qingwan walked and spoke on the quiet and empty stage. Under the light, they practiced over and over again. Their voices came from the empty space, long and quiet. Her voice was hoarse, and layers of cold sweat appeared on her body. Shun Xiyin's small face became paler and paler, as white as paper. Thinking about the past, I still feel regret. When I left, the flowers were like brocade. Today, the willow on the roof. Bang, there was a loud sound. Chu Qingwan came back to her senses and looked back. She saw Shen Xiyin, who had fallen on the stage. "Madam." She was shocked. Shen Xiyin's body was curled up on the table like a shrimp, and her thin body couldn't stop trembling. "Madam, what's wrong?" Chu Qingwan wanted to reach out to support her, but Shen Xiyin gritted her teeth and waved her hand. "I'm fine." She could endure the pain for a while and it would pass. Chu Qingwan was shocked by the bone-piercing pain and the beads of sweat on her forehead. She wanted to call for help, but Chu Qingwan held her back tightly. "No need to call for help. This is an old problem." After an unknown period of time, Shen Xiyin's body finally stopped trembling and her complexion improved slightly. "Madam, is this stomach cancer?" Chu Qingwan suddenly asked. Shen Xiyin looked up. Chu Qingwan continued, "My sister, she also passed away with stomach cancer." Shen Xiyin felt bitter. The chances of curing stomach cancer were almost zero. She nodded. Chu Qingwan reached out to help her up, her expression complicated. "Does the young commander know?" "I don't know." Shen Xiyin smiled. Chu Qingwan pursed her lips. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Yesterday, she had naturally seen the young commander's disgust and dislike for Shen Xiyin. If he knew about Shen Xiyin's body, would he still treat her like this? Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. After all, Shen Xiyin had done a lot of evil. In a daze, she heard Shen Xiyin's words again. "Please help me hide this matter, Miss Chu. I don't want him to know." "Miss Chu, many thanks." Faced with such a pair of pleading eyes, Chu Qingwan finally nodded. "Let's continue, Miss Chu." Shen Xiyin stood up. She still remembered Xiao Zhonghan's request. She still wanted to learn how to sing when her body was in such a condition. Chu Qingwan's voice faltered. "Why do you have to do this?" Chu Qingwan had personally seen how painful it was for someone with late-stage stomach cancer. It was because she had seen it that she didn't understand why Shen Xiyin was so insistent. Wasn't it good to tell Xiao Zhonghan? "He likes it." One sentence, 3 words. He liked it. Because of such a laughable and lamentable reason, Shen Xiyin supported her seriously ill body to learn how to sing on a cold winter night in such a place. Chu Qingwan's eyelashes moved slightly. She could see that Shen Xiyin didn't have much time left. This woman. Chapter 46-77. He took off his boots, washed up, and got into bed. That night, without Shen Xiyin by his side, Xiao Zhonghan felt that he slept especially well. It was not until late the next day that he was awakened by the soft footsteps of the servants outside. Getting out of bed, his eyes were still drowsy. Looking up, he saw that the hands of the quartz clock had already reached 10. Damn it, where was that woman? Why didn't she wake him up earlier? After cursing in his heart, Xiao Zhonghan suddenly froze. He remembered that the woman seemed to have run out last night. Run away? It was late at night and the world was not peaceful. She did not know many people here, so where could she have gone? Moreover, she had been spoiled since childhood and had never seen the suffering of the world. Xiao Zhonghan sneered and waited for Shen Xiyin to obediently roll back. He first went to Shen Xingyue's place to accompany her for breakfast. After comforting her for a while, Xiao Zhonghan took a car to the general office. The young commander was ruthless and decisive in his actions, and his subordinates were like iron rods in his hands. When he walked in, no one dared to raise their heads to look at him. Even if this person's status was once lower than theirs. From the outer circle of errand runners to the young commander who held real power, everyone envied him for meeting Shen Chenghe, except for himself. Sitting in the large, custom-made chair, he did not have time to do anything before the door was pushed open from the outside. Lerong winked and looked him up and down. "Oh, which beauty was it last night? So erosive that even our young commander Xiao is reluctant to get out of bed." Lerong and Xiao Zhonghan were true brothers who had gone through life and death together. The two were originally from Shen Chenghe's outer circle and went on missions together for several years. Later, when Xiao Zhonghan became the young commander, he also asked for Lerong. In front of him, Lerong never knew what high or low status was and did not pay attention to the way he spoke. Brothers were brothers. Xiao Zhonghan glanced at him. Do you need something? If you don't, then get out. All right. Your words are so unpleasant to hear, no wonder people hate you. Lerong's expression straightened and also withdrew his sloppy expression. He threw the letter in his hand onto Xiao Zhonghan's table. Qin Hai had someone deliver this. Speaking of which, did you detain that person's second concubine? I'm not scolding you, but Shen Xingyue has been married to Qin Hai for so many years. Why are you still thinking about her? Can't you properly? Xiao Zhonghan shot him a cold glare. Lerong rubbed his nose and didn't dare to continue. However, no one knew more about the matter between Xiao Zhonghan, Shen Xingyue, and Shen Xiyin than Lerong. He looked at Xiao Zhonghan's expression and tried to restrain himself, but in the end, he could no longer hold back. No. No matter how good second young Miss Shen is, she's already married. No matter how bad eldest young Miss Shen is, she's still been your wife for several years. Her heart is completely tied to you. Scram. This time, Xiao Zhonghan didn't even bother to look at him and directly kicked him out. Lerong was fearless. No matter what, Shen Chenghe had saved him. He had picked him up when he was about to starve to death. To return the favor, he could disregard Shen Xiyin and Xiao Zhonghan's feelings, but he still needed to advise them. Young Miss Shen is really good to you. I'm so envious. There are so many young men for her to choose from, but she only likes you. All these years, you've embarrassed her in every way, but I've never seen her complain about you. Where could he find such a wife? Before he could finish his sentence, whoosh, with a thud, a high-quality Duan Yang narrowly missed the top of his head and landed on the carpet behind him. He turned his head to look. Fortunately, the blanket was thick enough. Smacking his lips, Lerong finally obediently rubbed his nose and slipped away when he sensed the coldness emanating from Xiao Zhonghan's body. The door closed in front of him. Without Lerong's chatter, the air became still again. Chapter 4679. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Zhuo Wen and Ma Yujie's expressions changed slightly as they discovered that demonic puppets had appeared in the walls around them and were attacking them like locusts. Why are there so many demonic puppets? Ma Yujie's expression changed drastically. The number of demonic puppets had far exceeded his expectations. These demonic puppets were densely packed, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. They instantly slammed into the area where Ma Yujie and Zhuo Wen were standing. Boom, boom, boom. The demon-subduing bowl spewed out endless golden light, blocking the demonic puppets outside. However, there were too many demonic puppets. They swarmed over and crashed into them without any regard for their lives. Zhuo Wen and Ma Yujie couldn't help but retreat. These demonic puppets are protecting the demon infant. They're purposely pushing us away. Zhuo Wen frowned as he stared at the demon infant in the center of the empty space. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but the demon infant seemed to have revealed a strange smile. Brother Ma, is there no other way? If this continues, we'll be forced to leave this place. Zhuo Wen couldn't help but look at Ma Yujie and ask in a low voice. He knew that this fatty had many trump cards and knew far more secrets than him. He must have a corresponding solution. Ma Yujie scratched his head and said solemnly, there's another way, and that is to use the primordial technique to absorb the primordial demonic qi and weaken the demon infant's power. However, Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed and he couldn't help but look at Ma Yujie and ask, however what? Ma Yujie said in a low voice, although the primordial technique is all-encompassing, it still depends on the cultivator's limit. The primordial demonic qi isn't ordinary demonic qi. It can easily affect one's mind. If one isn't careful, it's easy to fall into the demonic path and become a demonic puppet for the demon infant. This method isn't advisable. Zhuo Wen's expression changed slightly and he asked in a low voice, is there no other way? Ma Yujie thought for a moment and shook his head. This is the only way I can think of right now. The others are just a drop in the bucket. We can't break through the encirclement of so many demonic puppets. Then let's try this method first. If something goes wrong, immediately stop the primordial demonic qi, Zhuo Wen said in a low voice. Hearing this, Ma Yujie sighed and nodded. He and Zhuowen had already barged into this place. If they were to just leave like this, he would be very unwilling. The demon subduing arms bowl was still enveloping the two of them. Endless golden light sprayed out, isolating them from the endless demonic puppets. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie sat down cross-legged and began circulating the primordial grand mist technique. Crash. All of a sudden, the Archean demon chi inside the Archean demon seed surged into Zhuowen and Ma Yujie's bodies. Just as Ma Yujie had said, the primordial technique had an all-encompassing attribute. When Zhuowen cultivated this technique, he had absorbed many kinds of energy that he didn't need. This also caused Zhuowen's god power to have many different attributes. In addition, he had cultivated the limitless devil cannon before, so absorbing the devil chi was not difficult for Zhuowen. Such a surging devil chi. Is this the primordial demon chi? The moment he absorbed the primordial demon chi, Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he felt the power and terror of the primordial demon chi. Just as Ma Yujie had said, the primordial demon chi could easily affect one's mind. As soon as he started to absorb it, Zhuowen found that his mind was filled with endless negative emotions. If an ordinary cultivator absorbed a little bit of primordial demon chi, they would go crazy. However, the primordial technique that Zhuowen cultivated was extraordinary. It could filter out most of the negative emotions. Moreover, Zhuowen had two primordial stones on him, so the effects were not too great. What surprised Zhuowen the most was that as he continued to absorb the primordial demon chi, his understanding of the limitless devil cannon deepened. The limitless devil cannon was divided into 4 levels. He had successfully cultivated 2 levels and unlocked the demonic eye and demonic die. He had tried to cultivate it later, but it was difficult for him to break through to the 3rd level. The main reason was that there was no high-grade devil chi in the 100 domains. The limitless devil scriptures cultivation just so happened to require devil chi the most. Moreover, the higher the grade of devil chi, the more terrifying and powerful the divine ability cultivated would be. Now that the primordial demon chi was far stronger than ordinary devil chi, it was the perfect stepping stone for him to cultivate the limitless devil cannon. As the two of them continued to absorb the primordial demon chi that originally filled the entire space gradually thinned out. As the primordial demon chi thinned out, the number of devil puppets in the surroundings also gradually decreased. These devil puppets relied on the primordial demon chi to move. Now that the primordial demon chi was decreasing, they naturally kept retreating. When the devil puppets had decreased by half, Ma Yujie suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with a scarlet light, filled with violence, hostility, and killing intent. This primordial demon chi is really terrifying. Although it is filtered by the primordial technique, the negative emotions contained in it are still terrifying. Ma Yujie muttered to himself. His hands formed seals, and with the help of the demon subduing bowl's power, he gradually offset the negative emotions in his body. His eyes were filled with lingering fear. When his eyes regained clarity, he was shocked to find that Zhuowen was still sitting cross-legged beside him, and he was still absorbing the primordial demon chi. This kid. Ma Yujie was dumbfounded. He obviously did not expect Zhuowen to still be absorbing the primordial demon chi. Zhuowen has 2 primordial stones, so it should be reasonable for him to have a stronger resistance against the primordial demon chi. Ma Yujie's eyes revealed a pondering look, and the shock in his heart gradually calmed down. 2 hours, 4 hours. 2 hours passed, and the devil puppets in the surroundings of the space had almost disappeared. Zhuowen was still absorbing the primordial demon chi. F***ck. Why is this guy still absorbing the primordial demon chi? Is he not affected at all? Ma Yujie's face was filled with disbelief. Suddenly, Zhuowen opened his eyes. The depths of his eyes were scarlet, as if he was a peerless demon. However, within the scarlet red eyes, they were incomparably clear. The limitless demon book has finally broken through to the 3rd level. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly, and he was in a good mood. The primordial demon chi was indeed extraordinary. He had only absorbed it for less than a day, and he had broken through to the third level like a hot knife through butter. What surprised him even more was that the third level of the Limitless Demon Book gave him a divine ability called Demon Body. He could summon the demon armor from the depths of the void, cover his whole body, and transform into a peerless demon. At this moment, Zhuowen's attack, speed, defense, and so on would increase by hundreds and thousands of times, and his strength would increase tremendously. What surprised him even more was that the demon armor was extremely hard, and ordinary attacks could not break it at all. Zhuowen stood up straight, and just as he was about to look for Ma Yujie, he was shocked to find that Ma Yujie had hidden far away and was looking at him in horror. "Brother Ma, what's wrong with you? Have the devil puppets retreated?" Zhuowen looked around and found that the endless devil puppets in the open space were all gone, and could not help but ask in puzzlement. Ma Yujie looked at Zhuowen nervously and said, You absorbed so much primordial demon qi, are you the real person or not? If you don't tell the truth, this fat lord will destroy you." Zhuowen was stunned and immediately reacted, knowing that this Ma Yujie must have misunderstood something. Chapter 4680. Brother Ma, I feel that you have some misunderstanding about me. I am the real deal. Zhuowen frowned. Seeing that Ma Yujie was hiding far away, he couldn't help but step forward to reason with him. Unexpectedly, Ma Yujie was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He ran to the other side with his short legs and distanced himself from Zhuowen. "Don't come over now. The more you say that, the more suspicious you are. Do you think this fatty is stupid? Do I look like someone who is so easily fooled?" The fat on Ma Yujie's face trembled as he stared at Zhuowen and said nervously. Zhuowen had a helpless expression and could only stop in his tracks. In the end, after Zhuowen's persuasion, Ma Yujie finally believed in Zhuowen completely. "Brother Zhuo, how did you do it? After absorbing so much primordial demon qi, your mind isn't affected." Ma Yujie approached Zhuowen, his eyes full of eagerness as he asked. "This is my secret. Forgive me for not telling you." Zhuowen retorted indifferently. How could he not know what this fatty was planning? Naturally, he couldn't tell this fatty. In the past, he had always thought that the Limitless Demon Book was just an ordinary demon Dao cultivation method. But now, he didn't think so. This demonic book could actually absorb the primordial demonic qi to advance in cultivation, which showed how extraordinary it was. Especially when he found that the Limitless Demon Book and primordial technique worked together, there was an extraordinary sense of tacit understanding. He didn't know if it was a coincidence or there was really some kind of connection. But he knew that by relying on the Limitless Demon Book and primordial technique, he could absorb primordial demon qi to cultivate the Limitless Demon Book without fear. He was looking forward to what kind of more powerful demon Dao abilities the Limitless Demon Book would give him after he cultivated to the 4th level. Next, we should think of a way to get the primordial stone in the demon infant's hand. And how should we deal with the demon infant? Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie and asked. Zhuowen knew nothing about the archaic demon seed, so he naturally had no idea how to deal with the demon infant. He could only ask Ma Yujie for help. "Of course I have a way to deal with the demon infant. However, this method is too powerful. We can eliminate the demon infant while it's still asleep, but I'm afraid that it will cause damage to the primordial stone." Ma Yujie's brows furrowed tightly. He was obviously worried that his method was inappropriate and stood there hesitantly. The only way to retrieve the primordial stone is to shatter the sphere and snatch the primordial stone from the demon infant. Zhuowen pointed at the sphere in the middle of the pillar and said in a low voice. Ma Yujie sighed softly and said, "I'm afraid not." That sphere was formed from the demon infant's most powerful magic power, and it contains half of the demon infant's magic power. Normal methods can't break it. The only way is the method I mentioned earlier that can eliminate the demon infant in one fell swoop, but Zhuowen naturally understood what Ma Yujie was worried about. Since this sphere is formed from the demon infant's magic power, won't the sphere disappear if we absorb all the magic power on the surface of the sphere? Zhuowen said. "Are you crazy? Do you know how terrifying the magic power contained in the demon infant is? Even if it's half, it's still thousands of times more than the primordial demon chi we absorbed in the open space just now. It's not something we can absorb. It's going to kill us. Ma Yujie shook his head repeatedly, completely disagreeing with Zhuowen's method. Let me try. Zhuowen stepped into the air and floated in front of the sphere. Brother Zhuo, don't be rash. You're playing with your life by doing this, Ma Yujie hurriedly said. Zhuowen looked down at Ma Yujie and said in amusement, Brother Ma, haven't you always liked to trick me? If I die, won't that be exactly what you want? Ma Yujie fell silent and shook his head. I'm just taking advantage of you because of my personality, but I don't want you to die like this. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Zhuowen smiled indifferently and looked at the sphere in front of him. He took a deep breath and slowly placed his right palm on the sphere's surface. At this moment, Zhuowen circulated the primordial grand mist technique and limitless devil tome and began to madly absorb the magic power on the sphere's surface. When the demon infant's magic power entered Zhuowen's body, endless ruthlessness, killing intent, and other negative emotions rushed into Zhuowen's mind. However, these negative emotions were basically all absorbed and digested by the limitless devil tome, so their effect on Zhuowen was negligible. Time gradually passed. It was unknown how long had passed, but it felt as if an entire century had passed. Zhuowen suddenly realized that the limitless devil tome in his body had successfully broken through to the fourth stage. He could feel that the magic power in his body had reached a terrifying level. After the limitless devil tome broke through to the fourth stage, it also gave Zhuowen a devil Dao ability. This devil Dao ability was called Devil Domain. What surprised Zhuowen the most was that the devil domain was divided into 18 layers, just like the 18 layers of hell. The opening of each level required a huge amount of devil chi cultivation in order to successfully open. Now that he had just obtained the devil domain, naturally, he had not opened any of the 18 layers yet. He also realized that the sphere's magic power was still very rich, so he continued to absorb magic power and open up the devil domain. The rolling magic power was like a creator, and it began to open up the devil domain layer by layer. Every layer of the devil domain was filled with magic power, and there were many demonic creatures. The lower the layer, the more powerful the magic power and demonic creatures. When all 18 layers of the devil domain were opened up, Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were no longer crimson red. Instead, they had turned pitch black, making him look exceptionally strange and sinister. When Ma Yujie saw this scene, he had already hidden far away. In fact, the current Zhuowen's aura was too strange. His entire body was filled with terrifying magic power, and his pitch-black eyes were emotionless and cold. The current Zhuowen was more like a demon than a demon. Ma Yujie only felt that the current Zhuowen was very dangerous, and he did not dare to approach him easily. Crack! Suddenly, a crisp cracking sound rang out. The spherical light barrier on the surface of the demonic nascent soul was riddled with countless cracks before shattering with a loud boom. A terrifying magic power came crashing down like countless stars, causing the entire space to bear a terrifying pressure. This brat really did absorb all of the light barrier's demonic energy, but Ma Yujie looked at Zhuowen, who was covered in demonic energy. Although he wanted to go and take the primordial stone, he was still quite cautious and hesitant. At this moment, Zhuowen, who was surrounded by magic power, suddenly reached out with his right hand and grabbed the primordial stone in the demon infant's palm. The moment he grabbed the primordial stone, the demon infant suddenly opened his pitch-black eyes, and his small hand covered with red patterns grabbed Zhuowen's wrist. Chapter 4683. Boom. Shun Xiyin felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her hands tightly clenched as she looked at him in disbelief. But the man in front of her had his lips curled in ridicule. It was so obvious that the rest of her words were stuck in her throat. A cold glint flashed through Xiao Zhonghan's eyes. A person like you should have died long ago. Don't worry, if you truly die, I will definitely have the entire Shao Shui Fu draped in red decorations to celebrate. With a bang, the door was closed. Shun Xiyin powerlessly collapsed to the ground. The current her simply could not bear Xiao Zhonghan. Her hands did not listen to her and trembled like sifting chaff. Elder Lin's words echoed in her ears. Madam, your body, if you properly recuperate, you should still have a year left. As if her entire body had been repeatedly crushed, Shun Xiyin pulled off a pillowcase and stuffed it into her mouth. The pain from her illness was not as easy to endure as she had imagined. Her intestines felt like they were being pulled out inch by inch. In order to not disturb Xiao Zhonghan, Shun Xiyin desperately clenched her teeth and endured. Night. Cold as water. Shun Xiyin stood outside the door for a long time before taking a deep breath and pushing open the door. Xiao Zhonghan raised his head and his gaze fell on her body. Zhonghan, you were looking for me. Shun Xiyin was dressed as usual, and her hair was neatly tied up. At first glance, she appeared dignified and virtuous. But Xiao Zhonghan knew exactly what kind of person she was. The corner of his mouth curled and he threw over an exquisite and gorgeous gift box. Send this to Paramount. Qing Wan threw a tantrum. Go apologize to her. Just say that this marshal will compensate her another day. Hearing his words, Shun Xiyin's eyes dimmed. The gift box was very light, but she felt that it was incomparably heavy as she held it in her hands. Taking a deep breath, Shun Xiyin forced herself to wear a gentle smile. Okay, I will definitely personally deliver it to her. Respectful, gentle, treating him as the sky, treating him as the earth. Xiao Zhonghan was angered. This woman was really good at enduring and acting, since it was like this. He smiled maliciously. Qing Wan said that she always sings for others to hear. Tomorrow, prepare to sing for her. As he spoke, he seemed extremely satisfied with his sudden idea. Right. Just like this, Qing Wan will definitely be very happy. Shun Xiyin's shoulders trembled slightly. Trembling, from his shoulders to his hands, then to his feet. Xiao Zhonghan, do you really hate me this much? Hate me? You hate me so much that you don't even want to leave me a little bit of dignity. Xiao Zhonghan narrowed his eyes, appreciating with satisfaction the woman's suddenly pale face and trembling body like a fallen leaf. Shun Xiyin, since you so yearned to become the young marshal's wife, now, isn't this exactly what you wanted? Mockery and smugness flashed through his eyes. But soon, his mocking and complacent expression froze on his face. The woman's trembling body suddenly calmed down. A respectful smile once again appeared on her face. She looked at him and said, All right, whatever Zhonghan says. Tomorrow, I will sing it for Miss Chu. Sing Qing Wan's favorite song. All right. Shun Xiyin did not know how she walked out of Xiao Zhonghan's room. Her cheeks were stiff and her steps were faster with each step. In the end, he shut himself in the room with a bang. His body went limp and fell down the door. My heart hurts so much. It hurts so much here. Chapter 4685. The world spun and Zhuowen felt as if he was floating in the air. He wanted to move but found that his body was stiff and he couldn't move at all. It was as if the blood in his body had frozen. What's going on? Zhuowen was shocked. He tried to open his eyes but found that his eyelids seemed to be filled with lead. He couldn't open them at all. At the same time, he also found that his 5 senses, divine sense, and so on were all blocked by some mysterious power. He couldn't sense what was going on around him at all. However, he could feel that he seemed to be drifting in some kind of spatial passage. Moreover, the speed was so fast that he felt as if he was caught off guard. Suddenly, 4 purple lights appeared in the depths of Zhuowen's mind. The purple lights became clearer and clearer. Only then did he realize that the source of the purple lights were 4 stones. Primordial stones? Zhuowen naturally recognized these 4 stones. Weren't they the primordial stones? In an instant, endless purple light soared into the sky and enveloped his entire mind. In the end, there was only endless purple light left in front of his eyes. In the endless purple light, he saw the vast starry sky and the prosperous and lush domain continents floating in the starry sky. He also saw the huge primordial tree that stood in the starry sky and connected the ends of heaven and earth. He also saw the huge and mysterious primordial star floating at the end of the sky. His gaze fell on the primordial star. His gaze constantly zoomed in and penetrated deep into the primordial star. He saw many imposing and powerful figures standing in the primordial star. They were like an army that had gathered in a vast and boundless plain. These imposing figures were surrounded by divine brilliance. Rays of multicolored light contained an aura that made one's heart palpitate. Primordial gods. Zhuowen murmured softly. He looked deeply at the army that seemed to be made up of primordial gods. Suddenly, Zhuowen noticed that at the end of the primordial god army, rolling demonic fog was sweeping over. It was surging over in an overwhelming manner. As the demonic mist rolled over, the earth seemed to have been dyed black. It looked strange and deep. Countless divine grasses, divine trees, and other things that were full of vitality were all withered and destroyed. In the depths of the demonic fog, pairs of crimson eyes were revealed. They were terrifying demonic creatures. Primordial skyfiend. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, revealing a solemn expression. He had absorbed the primordial demon chi before and had also come into contact with the demon infant in the primordial demon seed. He could tell at a glance that the demon chi that was sweeping over was the primordial demon chi. Is this the battle between the primordial gods and the primordial heavenly demons? Zhuowen thought to himself. When he looked back at the battlefield, he saw that the primordial god and the primordial heavenly demon were already fighting. The blazing divine radiance and the gloomy demonic chi collided in the heavens and the earth. It was as if the heavens and the earth had been split into light and darkness. It was an exceptionally terrifying sight. Is this the power of the primordial gods and primordial heavenly demons? How powerful! Zhuowen's expression changed completely as he watched the battle. Whether it was the primordial gods or primordial heavenly demons, their power far exceeded that of the chaotic starry sky. In his eyes, the Lord of the Abyss was already extremely terrifying. However, in this battle, any primordial god or primordial heavenly demon could kill the Lord of the Abyss in an instant. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. Zhuowen could not help but think of the primordial demon seed's demon infant. Although the latter's strength was far inferior to that of an adult primordial heavenly demon, it was still an infant. It had not yet grown up or even hatched. Even so, the demon infant's strength far exceeded Zhuowen's. If he had not relied on the limitless demonic tome to absorb more than half of the demon infant's demonic chi, he would probably have died in the ruins of the Master God Whirl. On the battlefield, the battle became more and more intense and terrifying. The vast plains were torn apart by the terrifying battle, forming a bottomless abyss. One primordial god and primordial heavenly demon after another fell into the depths of the abyss, forming mountains of corpses and seas of blood. However, what made Zhuowen fearful was that after those primordial heavenly demons died, the other primordial heavenly demons actually pounced on them and devoured their corpses. Meanwhile, the auras of those primordial heavenly demons who devoured the corpses of their own kind actually skyrocketed, reaching an unprecedentedly terrifying level. As the primordial heavenly demons continued to fall and devour and grow stronger, the situation on the battlefield that was originally evenly matched gradually turned. The primordial god's side was gradually suppressed by the primordial heavenly demons. No wonder Brother Ma mentioned that the primordial god would suffer a crushing defeat. It turns out that these primordial heavenly demons can strengthen themselves by devouring the corpses of their own kind. This is unexplainable. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. It had to be said that the primordial heavenly demons' ability to strengthen themselves by devouring their own kind was truly terrifying. As long as the primordial heavenly demons were not completely eradicated in one go, the primordial heavenly demon side would only grow stronger as the battle continued, while the primordial god side would be constantly weakened and would definitely suffer a crushing defeat in the end. In addition, the primordial heavenly demon's ability to reproduce was extremely terrifying. Now, Zhuowen more or less understood why the primordial god would be suppressed by the primordial heavenly demons to such an extent. Soon, the scene gradually disappeared, and Zhuowen also discovered that the feeling of floating around him gradually disappeared. His feet stepped on the ground, and he suddenly felt a sense of steadiness. This is. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and looked around. Only then did he realize that he was standing on the peak of a mountain that was as black as ink. Around him, there was an endless stretch of huge mountains, and peaks stood tall on the mountain range. From afar, it looked like a crouching dragon with sharp horny barbs on its back. What a strong demon chi! Zhuowen looked up and saw that there was no blue sky or white clouds in the sky above the mountain. Instead, there were rolling black clouds. In the depths of the black clouds, there were dense blood-red thunderbolts lingering. The terrifying roar of thunder constantly resounded in his ears, causing his face to turn ugly and his gaze to turn gloomy. The entire mountain range, or rather, the entire heaven and earth, was filled with primordial demon chi that made him fearful. It was like a strange demon realm. Suddenly, Zhuowen seemed to have sensed something, and his gaze fell on a mountain peak on the left. He saw that there was also a figure standing on that mountain peak. The figure was extremely bloated, and at first glance, it looked like a round ball. Ma Yujie? Zhuowen immediately recognized the fat figure and could not help but rush to the mountain peak on the left. When he landed on the mountain peak, he looked at Ma Yujie and realized that Ma Yujie had turned a deaf ear to his arrival, and was only staring blankly at the sky. Zhuowen originally wanted to question the fat man about the passageway on the primordial tree. However, when he saw that Ma Yujie was in a daze, and there was a deep sadness in the depths of his eyes, he did not question him again. This is the primordial star system? Zhuowen was silent for a moment and suddenly asked. Ma Yujie sighed deeply and said with a bitter smile, "Yes, this is the primordial star system, but it is no longer the primordial star system of the past." Chapter 4686. Brother Ma, since you used to be a creature of the immemorial star system, you should be quite familiar with it. Where is this place? Zhuowen looked around and found that the surrounding mountain range was filled with rolling demonic chi and blood lightning. It was like hell on earth. He couldn't help but ask. Ma Yujie regained his calm. He looked around and said with a frown, "This place is completely shrouded in demonic chi. The terrain has changed greatly, but I can still distinguish a part of it." As he spoke, Ma Yujie flew up into the sky and looked around. After a while, he landed beside Zhuowen. "Did you see anything?" Zhuowen asked. "If I'm not wrong, this should be a mountain range in the 7 constellation star system in the south, Chariot star system." Ma Yujie looked serious and continued, "Before I died, Chariot star system was still the territory of the immemorial god. Now it seems." Although Ma Yujie didn't finish his words, Zhuowen could guess what he meant. Chariot star system had been occupied by the immemorial heavenly demons in the years after Ma Yujie died. "Where is the immemorial god's territory?" Zhuowen asked. Ma Yujie smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Zhuo, I don't have the ability to predict the future. I've been away for too long. I don't know what the current situation of the immemorial star system is." Suddenly, Zhuowen and Ma Yujie's expressions changed greatly. They couldn't help but look up at the sky. In the sky ahead, rolling demonic chi was sweeping over at an extremely fast speed. In the rolling demonic chi, pairs of scarlet eyes flickered with a strange red light. They were looking at the mountain peak where the two of them were. "Oh no! It's the army of the immemorial heavenly demons." Ma Yujie's expression changed greatly. Without thinking, he took Zhuowen to hide in a remote cave at the foot of the mountain peak. The moment the two of them hid in the cave, the rolling demonic chi descended and landed on the mountain peak where Zhuowen and Ma Yujie were originally. The demonic chi dispersed and more than 10 figures landed on the open space on the mountain peak. These figures looked very similar to humans. The only difference was that their skin was pitch black and they were wearing ferocious black armor. Other than that, they had ferocious horns growing out of various parts of their bodies, such as their foreheads, elbows, knees, and so on. These figures were the army of primordial heavenly demons. Their leader was a female heavenly demon with a hot body. There was a small horn on her forehead that was a few inches long. It was sparkling and translucent, like a natural jade. Although this female heavenly demon's skin was also pitch black, her facial features were very delicate. She could be considered a beauty among the human race. The female extraterrestrial demon was clearly the leader of the team. The dozen or so male extraterrestrial demons, who were far more muscular than the female extraterrestrial demon, followed behind her timidly, not daring to be impudent. I clearly felt two unusual auras just now. Why did they disappear now? The female heavenly demon looked around the mountain range, and her scaly brows slowly furrowed. "Milord, just now, we sensed two auras that suddenly appeared here. Although those auras did not belong to us primordial heavenly demons, they did not seem to belong to primordial gods either. Their auras were very weak. Do you think we sensed wrongly?" A male extraterrestrial demon stepped forward and saluted the female extraterrestrial demon respectfully. "Are you doubting my senses?" The female extraterrestrial demon looked at the male extraterrestrial demon unkindly. "I dare not." The male extraterrestrial demon hurriedly knelt down, trembling as he begged for mercy. "Search the entire area once. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, find the two auras that I sense." The female extraterrestrial demon said calmly. "Yes, yes." The group of male heavenly demons bowed their heads and flew out. They began to search the surrounding mountains in an all-encompassing manner. Soon, only the female extraterrestrial demon with the voluptuous figure was left on the mountain peak. The female extraterrestrial demon's eyes narrowed slightly. Her immense divine sense spread out and began to search the entire mountain peak. Nothing. After searching the entire mountain peak, the female extraterrestrial demon frowned slightly. Just as she was about to withdraw her divine sense, her eyebrows suddenly twitched. Her divine sense stopped at a remote cave at the foot of the mountain. This cave was very ordinary. She had also sent her divine sense into the cave just now. She had carefully examined the cave, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. The position of the gravel at the entrance of the cave is a little different from the one before. The female extraterrestrial demon's divine sense landed at the entrance of the cave. There was a piece of gravel half the size of a palm on the ground, and a mysterious light burst out from the depths of her eyes. Whoosh! The female extraterrestrial demon leaped down slowly from the mountain peak and stopped at the entrance of the cave. Boom! The female extraterrestrial demon suddenly punched the entrance of the cave without warning. Colorful ripples suddenly appeared at the entrance of the cave. It is indeed an array. No wonder it could escape my detection. It is a shielding array. The female extraterrestrial demon sneered and withdrew her right fist. The array at the entrance of the cave shattered into countless fine powder and disappeared without a trace. "I give you 3 breaths of time to get out. Otherwise, I don't mind tearing down this entire mountain peak." The female extraterrestrial demon's eyes flickered with scarlet light. She licked her lips and sneered. As soon as she finished speaking, 2 footsteps came from the cave. The female extraterrestrial demon looked up and was suddenly stunned. 2 figures walked out of the cave. Their bodies were surrounded by rolling primordial demon chi. 2 pairs of scarlet eyes were particularly glaring in the demon chi. People of the same race. The female extraterrestrial demon's eyes were filled with doubt. She looked at the 2 figures surrounded by demons with a look of disbelief. Previously, when she led a group of people to patrol this place, she sensed that the aura was obviously not the aura of the demon clan. Why did the aura change so much now? Could it be that she had sensed wrongly? "Greetings, my lord." The 2 figures surrounded by demon chi cupped their hands respectfully at the female extraterrestrial demon. "Why are the 2 of you here instead of searching for traces of the primordial god?" The female extraterrestrial demon frowned and asked. "My lord, we were searching for traces of the primordial god. Later on, we sensed an unusual aura here, so we entered this mountain peak to check it out." One of the figures surrounded by demon chi cupped his hands and said. The female extraterrestrial demon raised an eyebrow and said, "So you sensed it too? Did you find anything?" The 2 figures shook their heads. One of them said, "It's very strange. When we arrived here, the aura suddenly disappeared. It was as if it had disappeared into thin air." Hearing this, the female extraterrestrial demon frowned and muttered to herself, "Disappeared into thin air? That's strange. My lord. This mountain range is too big. We only searched here. Perhaps the aura is hiding in the other mountains. Please allow us to go to the other mountains to search, one of the figures suddenly said. The female extraterrestrial demon did not suspect him. She nodded and said, "Go ahead. Remember to inform me if you find it." "Yes." The two figures answered solemnly. Then, they turned into two streams of light and disappeared. The female extraterrestrial demon stood silently by the side of the cave. She suddenly noticed the broken array flag at the entrance of the cave. She picked up the array flag and looked at it carefully. Her pupils constricted and she said, "This was set up not long ago. In other words, not good." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.